All right, hello gamers, I'm Mukluk here. You may notice that something is missing. That something is, of course, my luxurious hair, because I am bald right now. I am not good. I am under the weather, and I am hiding my disgusting-looking visage behind me muck today. So, deal with it. For some of you, this will be an improvement. So, today, Guild Wars 2 did a stream where they went over some upcoming balance changes, a preview of what is to come, and as always, we get, time to whine about it on the forums if we don't like it. So, we are going to watch this. Now, originally, this was an almost 2-hour thing. However, if we skip the, 10-minute intro and speed it up a little bit, I'm going to do 1.5 times speed. That's me holding back, okay? When I watch things on my own time, I do 2x speed because I'm a weirdo. This is me holding back, all right? This is the compromise between us. All right, let's see how they're nerfing Elementalists.
All right, hello and welcome to the balance update preview.
That is max volume, just so you know. All right, so Cal and Taylor Trig Brooks.
For the June 24th balance update. I'm Cal CMC Cohen, joined by Taylor Trig Brooks. Unfortunately, no Roy today, so apologies for some of the maybe imperfect streaming things that you will see today. No music in the intro. Hopefully everything else works out okay. Let us know if...
Wow, did they have to do Windows updates today as well, guys? Because Windows broke my intro today. Huh.
The audio balance is okay, because it has been a hot minute.
It is not.
Since I've been a streamer, and someone wanted me to run the stream.
Is Cal the water bottle guy? Yes, that is the only accomplishment to his name. Yes, he is the water bottle guy.
We'll have Roy back for the next one, but for now you get to deal with just Taylor and myself. How are you doing today, Taylor?
No, I'm doing pretty good. Excited for this patch. Some might say,
Well, I almost wish you guys could see my face right now. My eyes just popped out of their sockets a little bit. Are you...
tickled for it. But, I think this patch is...
Wow. Wow. Okay. All right. Going
to be a pretty interesting one. Last patch was a lot of number tuning. I think this patch is going to be not a lot of number tuning, a lot of functional changes, which I'm pretty excited to show with you.
Got some spicy changes for sure. Getting some echo.
Echoing.
Why is Taylor echoing? Great start.
I wonder if I fast forward like 5 minutes, if we'll still be at the same spot.
If only we...
Skip.
Well, now they said you're muted.
Skip.
Fixed.
Skip.
It's really unfortunate, but it looks like we have fixed the audio. Much appreciated. Chat. Now let's get into some balance. How about that?
Yes. Let's do that.
Let's move over here to the PowerPoint and start talking about some balance changes. June 24th, actually also my birthday, so...
Happy birthday, Gal.
But I always get distracted. Key update for the preview stream, though, is that there are now some skill icons included with all the patch notes. This is something we've seen pretty often that, it's just something that can be improved with the stream, is that a lot of people just don't remember every skill name in the game or every trait name in the game. And
I don't know.
So we've traded...
remember every skill...
We've traded audio expertise on this stream for skill icons. I'm here for it.
In our game. But now they have pictures. Probably one of the biggest points of feedback for the stream is so you guys can see what exactly we're talking about and follow along just a bit better.
All right, you ready to hop in, Taylor?
Yep.
Let's get going. Starting off with, I think we have one general change.
Yes.
Let us hear it.
Yep, this is Blasting a Dark Field will now grant Area Dark Aura instead of Area Blindness. This patch in a couple places, we're trying to add some Dark Aura hooks, because it was previously only accessible, I think, through, leaping through a Dark Field. So we're trying to add a bit more ways to get it, and a bit of trade hooks, trying, just a new thing to play around. So this is the one general change we have, and you're going to see in some upcoming traits some hooks for it.
Dark Aura actually pretty good as well.
Yep.
It's like a 20% damage reduction to conditions.
Yeah, you get Torment on hit, so...
All right, pretty exciting. We'll obviously get to some of those changes later in the stream. We are kicking things off in Alpha.
Yeah, Dark Aura, you don't see that often. As he said, it wasn't available to many classes. They had to do very specific things, such as leaping through a dark field. And, for me, for example, none of the classes I have mained at any point in the last few years had that accessible to them. So, it's not something I'd ever see.
Alphabetical order this time. There is, a sensible order to the way that we cover the professions today. So starting off with the Elementalist. Let's see what we got.
Do they have closed captioning? I don't think so. I actually, since I'm watching this after the fact, because they did this at 3 p.m. my time, and it is currently 7 and change p.m. my time. I tried to see if they had it on YouTube, because they streamed this to YouTube, but they didn't save the VOD there, or maybe they're waiting for a thumbnail or something. I don't know. But it was only on Twitch when I pulled this up. so I don't see it.
Gotcha.
Chat is also saying that you should turn yourself up a little bit, maybe.
Turn myself up. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've turned myself up. Let me know how it is. I can turn myself up.
Much better, Cal. Thank you.
Yeah, so starting with the element list, we have some adjustments to hammer. Quite a few adjustments to hammer, actually. There are a number of numerical changes that we'll see. In addition to, well, there's a good reason, actually. Then we also have some reworks to utility skills, and as always, some minor tweaks and adjustments to traits. So let's just get started. Big change here is that Flame Wheel is getting a reduction in its damage bonus. This is primarily due to the interaction with like Tempest Overloads, and we'll quickly speed through the next couple of ones here. There's a pile of hammer notes. The goal here is that
What? Stop! No, wait, hold on, Cal. Cal, what do you mean? There's some hammer notes. What the? Okay, hold on. Senji strike increase for okay. PVE buff, PVE buff, PVE buff, PVE buff, buff. It's freaking. Okay, alright, it's all PvE LE hammer numbers go up. Okay, that's this whole page. Alright.
Yep, this is actually a buff to hammer damage because Flame Wheel is going down by 10%, but all hammer damage going up by 15%. The goal here is to put the power of hammer into hammer. Flame Wheel was previously how we used to like bump hammer up a bit, but when a large amount of damage is coming from things that aren't weapon skills, like profession mechanics, it meant that, you know, it held back how much we could put damage into hammer, which is why, you know, Hammer Tempest was such a good build, but Hammer Catalyst was falling behind. So this is how we're going to choose to try and even things out a bit so we can put more of the power level in hammer's actual skills.
All right, very cool. Moving on, we got a really interesting rework to Arcane Power here. It's now going to be called Arcane Echo, and the idea is that it is kind of like a mimic for weapon skills. Obviously, Mimic is a mesmer utility that allows you to get a very quick recharge on one of your other utility skills, and then increase the cooldown based off the cooldown of the skill you use. Basically, the exact same thing with Arcane.
Okay, the skill's been reworked and renamed Arcane Echo. The skill now causes your next weapon skill to recharge instantly. The recharge of the skill is increased by the recharge of the recharged weapon skill. I would like to use that in World v. World with Fire Staff and drop meteors, and then immediately drop meteors again on an enemy blob. Kind of like how I did the arrow cart build on Ranger with Longbow. That is how I would use this.
Power just for weapon skills. So, you know, maybe you need some more meteor showers in your life. You can take Arcane Power, cast Meteor Shower again. You know, maybe you cast Elemental Celerity, cast Meteor Shower again. Could be a lot of meteor showers.
Yep.
Say that, he's got the same idea as I do.
Instead of giving the extra Arcane Power crit stacks.
Great minds.
Stacks, doesn't make as much sense anymore. We thought it could still fit, but now it's going to give you quickness when you use Arcane Echo, so it just gives you more speed in using your Meteor Shower, or, you know, whatever other skill you want to cast after using Arcane Echo. Next up, we have a rework to the Glyph of Elemental Power. You want to talk about this one, Taylor?
Yeah, Glyph of Elemental Power. Before, it was like a button that you press and it buffed your next strikes. It was kind of boring. It was decent for the amount of burn you could get out of it, but we kind of wanted to make this more utilitarian skill, where like that's how a glyph could shine. Is a lot of glyphs do the same thing, but like slightly different per attunement, but now we're making this do something like super different per attunement. So it'll still be a Sunbreak, but Fire is going to do all the damage and burning it just did, but then the other attunements are going to be pretty different from other things. So Water will give Condition Cleanse, Earth will give Barrier to allies, and then Air will Daze. So it is kind of like a Swiss Army knife what you want to do with it when you take the skill. You can slot it in for DPS, but maybe there are other times when you use it for other things. So hopefully giving it a bit of a new identity there.
All
I'm
right.
too loud now.
Your Taylor is now too loud.
Very curious about the numbers for this grant barrier to nearby allies. Ranger recently got a skill where their MOA could grant a barrier to nearby allies, but it's kind of bugged and it doesn't scale with healing power the way that it should. When any other class gives barrier to allies, the size of the barrier scales with your healing power, but the MOA one doesn't. So this one I would assume that it would not have that problem since it's coming from the Elementalist. But curious how good it's going to be, because if it's a nice, fat, thick barrier, you know, then that might become just a really good skill to use for all support Elise across the board.
Identity there.
All
I'm
right.
too loud now.
Your Taylor is now too loud. Talk a little quieter, I guess. Moving on to some of the utility skills that we talked about, and you have an elite skill on here as well. Ether Renewal is a skill that just isn't really great. We've reduced the cast time quite a few times over the history of the game, and it's still not really having the impact that we like. I think that we're pretty happy with where the cast time is now. It's obviously still pretty long, but you do have the opportunity to cover that cast with maybe stability or block, maybe like Arcane Shield, for example. But even in those cases, the amount of healing you're getting is just not good enough. So we're getting a pretty significant increase here. Per pulse up about 50% or so, and you know, now if you get the full heal off, there's going to be hopefully a little bit stronger than a lot of the other healing skills because there's that extra risk, hopefully a little bit higher reward. Signet Water getting a nice little update here, where it's also going to be removing conditions from allies. So we have a little bit of healing and now a little bit of cleanse, just like a pretty useful utility skill for support builds if you feel like you need a little bit more healing or condition removal. And Cleansing Fire, getting a big patch note here of breaking stun once again. Some of you guys might remember a long time ago when all the cantrips were stun breaks and all the elite builds played all cantrips and they were all stun breaks and it was very good. And a lot of those changed to not be stun breaks anymore. Since then, we've seen that Cleansing Fire just isn't really... It doesn't really have a role that is valuable. For a long time, that role was that it gave you access to Condi removal when you're not swapping into water, because, again, we're talking about like 10 years ago at this point, 12 years ago at this point, where so much of Elementalist condition removal was baked into the water attunement. Now that's not quite as accurate. You have other traits that are giving you access to Condi Cleanse when you're not doing that water swap. So the value of Cleansing Fire is just a little bit lower. And we've seen, over the years, we've made this an ammo skill, we've kind of added might to it, we've tweaked the Condi Cleanse and the cooldown, and it's never really gotten to the level of a playable skill. So now it's just going to break stun again. It is going to have like that more general use case of being a stun break. It's going to have value outside of Condi matchups. Obviously, you don't want it to still be an ammo skill, so that going back down to 1 ammo, we are bumping up the cleanse a little bit in competitive modes. We want to make sure that this feels good in Condi matchups, but also has applications outside of that, because that is more of the opportunity that you can slot the skill on your bar and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, I think small note is that this is for the just normal Cleansing Fire. Lesser Cleansing Fire from the trait will not be a stun break, so you're not just get random stun break procs from that.
For sure. And Tailored Victory, maybe Taylor's Victory, is that this skill will now let you move.
Yeah, it's a bit awkward that it stopped your movement, made it a bit harder to land, so hopefully it's just smoother quality of life change for the skill.
I think we've seen recently in recent updates.
That's nice, honestly. Like, Guild Wars 2, one of the things that it gloats about compared to many other MMOs is how much freedom of movement you have while you're playing your character. There's a select few skills in the game compared to... Like, it's a very small minority of skills compared to all of them that make you root in place while you are doing your thing. So I think anytime that, one of those gets that restriction lifted is nice, with rare exception.
It's that there's a lot of cases where we are kind of finding the skills that don't let you move and seeing which ones just feel a lot worse to use. 100 Blade's still stationary, but, we've been reviewing these as we go through the patches. Maybe someday. Moving on, we've got some trait updates here. Pyroance's Puissance. No longer going to remove your own might stacks when you trigger Flame Expulsion. Still going to get that might sharing, still going to get that damage explosion, but we found that this is just a pretty... I'm not sure exactly what word I'm looking for, but it feels really bad to build up all the might with Puissance, and then as you're going to another attunement, where maybe I want to still do damage in air attunement or still want to do damage in earth attunement, and losing all those might stacks, you still get the burst of flame expulsion, but overall it's like not super worth it. So we are just removing that kind of downside and making sure that the trait feels a bit better to play, and we'll, if we need to balance the flame expulsion damage or balance the might stacks or all those other things, we'll do that as needed, but for now we're just going to make the trait feel like the best version of itself, I guess.
Yep.
Next up, update to Blinding Ashes, getting a full rework. You want to talk about this, Taylor?
Yeah, this is turning a new trait Inferno. Burning will now scale with power instead of condition damage, but at a reduced rate. So this basically competes with some other damage bonuses in this trait line, but if you are a build that just so happens to be applying a lot of burning, it might be interesting to take this.
What? That's interesting. Changing the condition to scale with power instead of Condi damage. Okay. Definitely curious how the numbers will work. Because typically, a condition damage dealer will run Condi damage with a side serving of expertise. Condi damage make number go up, expertise makes it do more ticks. But power builds usually run power, precision, and ferocity. Ferocity doesn't help dots at all. Precision, sometimes there's a trait that makes your crits apply dots, such as curses and necromancy. So with that, then a bit of your precision scaling becomes more Condi damage as well. But this is just saying power will be your condition damage scaling, but at a reduced rate. Definitely this opens a lot of doors. This opens a lot of build diversity, ideas. That's really cool. I love this. I love changes like this, where it just makes the gears in my head start turning, and I'm thinking of all the possibilities. I would love to see stuff like this put in weird places for other builds and just see what happens. But very curious about what the numbers are going to be like.
Trait now instead of just flat modifiers on it. A lot of fire skills apply burning as well, and so if your burning just does a bit more damage, it's at a reduced rate, like we said, so it's not going to use the exact.
Yeah, a different class that I'm reminded of right now is Engineer with the Flamethrower. If you're running Flamethrower, you usually run power, because the Flamethrower, the impact damage is power, and then it leaves burning, but the burning damage is terrible. So despite the fact that it's a flamethrower, the actual burning damage, the dot that it leaves from the main attack, is garbage, and most people run power with it. Now, there are a few skills on the flamethrower, like the little firewall, that scale well with Kandi, but if you had a skill like this for a build like that, it would be pretty interesting.
Exact same, equation to calculate damage, but it should hopefully be pretty interesting. Maybe some builds want to take this instead of like 10% or puissance. So
yeah, obviously,
just trying to add more options to the builds here, because Blinding Ashes, the old way, it just kind of like blinded randomly, and it wasn't really a trait we like the playstyle of. So trying something new here.
Yeah, the big thing here is that your character's base power is 1,000, your character's base condition damage is 0. So we don't want to just say, hey, your base damage of burning is increased and you have a bunch of power and it's just even better. But essentially it's going to be like a higher base damage but reduced scaling in that sense, and more valuable to different types of builds.
Yep.
Next up, Soothing Disruption, getting a pretty big update as well. Previously it was that all cantrips will give you regen and vigor. They're also going to grant regen, but now it's going to be a case-by-case different boon per cantrip. So Ether Renewal is still going to have that vigor attached to it. Cleansing Fire going to give you Fury. Miststorm will give you stability at the end of it. Obviously you don't really need stability when you're invulnerable. Lightning Flash gives you a little bit of resistance. Armor Earth going to give you an Aegis, and Tornado a nice bit of protection when you cast that. So,
you know, Mistform, you don't need stability when you're invulnerable. Yes, true. And the stability from Spirit of Nature being on the end of it and not in the middle of it when you're casting would also make sense. I'm just saying.
So obviously we just had the update to Cleansing Fire to make it a stun break as well. Maybe more builds are looking at playing more cantrips, and Soothing Disruption. There's a lot of powerful boons on this right now, so maybe it looks a little bit more appealing. Last change, pretty big one here to Elemental Bastion as well.
Yep. This is small change with hopefully big effects. Tempest identity in competitive modes is through aura sharing and healing through their auras, and that's something that is pretty enjoyable. A lot of people like that identity in it, but in PvE, due to where Alacrity was in a straight line, it wasn't really able to take all those aura sharing effects. So we thought about how we could align their identities, and we decided to just add Alacrity to Elemental Bastion to give Tempest the ability to take this trait. There's still going to be Alacrity on Lucid Singularity. There are some builds that take Lucid that wouldn't be able to also flex into Elemental Bastion. So for now, we're just having Alacrity on both slots. Maybe in the future, we'll think of a way to have those other builds also take Bastion and then make a new trait. That's not just identity as Alacrity sharing, but for now, we're happy that Heal Tempest will potentially be able to, do some aura sharing.
Yep, definitely true. Right,
so, if aura sharing is going to give Alacrity, I wonder if it will give enough Alacrity that they don't need the other Alac trait? Is it just they contribute a little bit of Alacrity, or they can just, they now have two different build options for providing Alacrity, I wonder. Again, need to see the numbers. Go Popcat. We don't need Popcat. Look at this. Look at that. This is for special occasions, all right? It's not needed right now. There's nothing to scream about right now. We do need it. You don't need it! That's a moment. All right.
That's all we got for Ellie for this patch. We'll move into Engineer next.
Yep. Engineer, getting a decent amount of changes this patch. A lot of it focused around the core things of it. It's core utilities and core traits. See, we're gonna have some Elixir changes, kit updates. The kit updates are, pretty involved, and then some core trait reworks to make some trait lines more appealing than they are now.
All right, let's jump into it. Starting off with some Elixir changes.
Yep, Elixirs, a lot of them have been unused for a while, and so we're adding some additional functionality on top of all of them to see if they can, be slottable skills. Elixir B, its entire identity is giving you a lot of boons, so now it's going to do that even better and extend all boons on you by 3 seconds. So you can have boons from other sources, give yourself some short stability, short, quickness, and then use Elixir B, extend all of it to hopefully, get even more of a moment of power through it. Elixir C is a full condition convert, and that's a skill that, a couple other classes have. Contemplation of Purity is a very powerful skill we see used, but Elixir C is...
You could have a Harbinger throw their ult at you and give you every boon in the game, and then drink Elixir B and increase the duration of every boon in the game by 3 seconds. And that would be a lot of drugs.
Is very weak in comparison. And so instead of slapping a stun break on it and making it the same skill, we tried to see if we could go a different route. Make it instant so you can cleanse yourself through heal or taunt and fear, and now it's going to heal you for each boon you have after converting conditions. And so this is after converting all of them. So you could just use it when you have 7 boons from other sources, no conditions, and just get that heal, or you can convert a lot of conditions to boons and then get a big heal on top of that. So just trying to get a bit more value. And the last one is Elixir R. It's now going to be a stun break again with an increased cooldown. This is a skill that I think long time ago used a stun break, and then it didn't, and then nobody played it ever again. And we've buffed it a couple of times, but have never really saw use. So we're adding that back, and then going to see how it plays. Has some really nice utility on the toolbelt with it, that res, so getting a pretty good stun break and then res skill on top of it could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, pretty similar.
Yeah, I don't even really remember Elixir R. I remember Throw Elixir R, helps revive people, but the actual Elixir R, I was just sitting here thinking, I don't even remember what it does.
sorry to Cleansing Fire, where it just kind of fell off the face of the earth after not being a stun break, and we've tried to balance that version of the skill over the years, and it hasn't quite gotten there. So let's try to balance the stun break version again.
Yep.
Next up, we have Detection Pulse.
Yep.
Well, not
another
anymore.
another pretty unused thing. Detection Pulse being reworked. Before it was very, very niche in its use cases to reveal just players. It being reworked into Flashbang, which you're gonna throw out an explosive shell at an area, so it's kind of like a grenade or a mortar. You just throw it in an area. It's gonna land and then daze and blind people on impact. And it's still gonna keep the reveal component. It's like now a 600 range where it used to be 900, but you can throw it. So it's gonna also keep the reveal, but hopefully be a lot more usable and make things like utility goggles even more usable. Utility goggles are a pretty good skill by itself, so having a good tool belt on top of it will make it even more appealing. And
So for those that don't know, because Detection Pulse used to be really big in World v World. It's the, as you said, it's the tool belt skill for the utility goggles. So you take utility goggles as the utility, and then you get Detection Pulse on your tool belt. And when you would use it, it would do a big pulse, as you said, 900 range, and it would put revealed on everything in that range. So if there were any thieves within 900 range of you, unless they were in the middle of like a dodge roll or something, it would reveal all of them. Also useful in World v World if there was like, two enemy blobs and they're running at each other or something, and they did a bunch of stealth combos so that they were invisible. You could use that to get like the first engage. This is really interesting. So 600 radius, but you throw it so you can pick where the center of it is, as opposed to 900 radius centered from you, but it also does daze and blind. Very interesting.
then some keen-eyed people read Flashbang and be like, wait a minute, you guys, that's a trait. And then
does it make players' screens go white? Yeah, look, you joke. You joke. But back when I played EverQuest, there was an illusion spell called Flash of Light, and it literally made other people's screens just go black. I don't know why not white, but it made them go black, except for like the HUD. It's like you could still type to people, so you could type like, I can't see, but you couldn't do anything. I freaking loved that spell. It was a level 8 spell. I used that in PvP so much. It was glorious. It was so good.
Well,
go to
not
a
more.
next point where it's not. Flashbang being reworked. This is a trait that, a lot of people did not like playing against. It was seen as annoying. So we're reworking it to hopefully be something that's more interesting, called Grand Entrance. It'll make Explosive Entrance grant you resistance for a really short period, like 1.5 to 2 seconds, and then also increase your critical strike chance for a short period of time. So it's going from a trait that would, just blind people to now it is enhanced.
Hold on, Muck, you played EverQuest? Yes! Yes! That was when that was when I hold on. Yes! Yeah, that was where I started using the name Mukluk. Hold on, I'm gonna link the video because I've linked it before. That's where I started using the name Mukluk back in 2001, I think. Yeah, I'm an old Asura.
The first skill you use basically after you get that proc, so you know that dodge, get explosive entrance, and their next skill or two you use will be like pretty high damage because you won't be affected by weakness, and you also get that increased critical strike chance.
Yeah, it should be pretty powerful.
Thank you for the sub, Fire Lily. I appreciate you.
A lot of changes to the bomb kit here as well.
Oh shoot. Okay, what's he doing? Bomb reduces damage of PvP. Firebomb now inflicts increased burning on the first pulse. Total burning is unchanged. Concussion. This skill has been reworked and renamed Galvanic Bomb. Set an explosive that electrocutes enemies, dazing them. This might just be a personal beef. They don't have to rename stuff every time. It could still just be called Concussion Bomb, and they just change what it does. I feel like it just adds confusion when they put a new tooltip and a new name every time they change something. All right. Anyway, sets an explosive that electrocutes enemies, dazing them. Okay. Smoke Bomb. This skill is now instant. This skill has been removed to the tool belt and is replaced by Magnet Bomb. Magnet Bomb sets an explosive that pulls in enemies after delay. Huh. So assuming Magnet is still in the toolkit. Huh. So they get another pull. Big Ol' Bomb has been moved to bomb kit, replacing Glue Bomb. This skill now knocks down enemies instead of launching them, and now combos a blast finisher twice. Increase the radius from 300 to 360. That's interesting. A double blast finisher. That has a lot of possibilities.
If you want to talk about those, most importantly, bomb is nerfed in PvP.
Bomb kit was a kit that we wanted to add a bit more agency into. And so we're doing a couple changes, starting with the first two. We're putting more power into the other skills of bomb kit, so we want to take a bit of power out of bomb. It was actually a pretty high coefficient. It's just that, like, using the other skills made this kit terrible. So hopefully they're not terrible now, so Bomb's power level can go down. Firebomb, it's getting a change that you'll see a bit of other places this patch. It's going to inflict increased burning on the first pulse, where the total burning will be unchanged. But basically this means that you just need to hit people with the first perk to get a lot of the value, and the pulsing field will be less needed.
Yeah, that's something we've done like on a few skills recently, and we'll see a bit more of that later in the patch as well, where a lot of these like longer duration pulsing fields, they're, you know, you get a lot of value if people stand in them the whole time, or you lock someone down in the whole time, but the most common case is that that's not super realistic. So we want to make sure that, you know, that extended value still exists, but these skills are still reasonable or decent if you're only getting that initial couple hits as well. Actually, we still want to reward you for getting the full value of it, but we don't want you to feel bad about the skill if you're only getting like that initial impact.
Yep. And then Concussion Bomb is seeing a tweak being renamed.
It makes sense. They're making it front heavy. They're front loading it. So the firebomb, the full firebomb, is going to do the same damage, but some of that damage has been moved from the middle and the back of it, of the duration, to the front of it. So if you just hit them for the first second, it will do more damage than it used to.
Into Galvanic Bomb, a more electricity-focused skill. It's basically going to be a bomb that does daze. So this is, like we said, adding more agency to the kit, adding a bit of CC to a lower cooldown skill. And then on this note, the goal of this change in the Flamethrower for PvE, some of the things are being tweaked, and our goal is not to like nerf these skills. So right now, as written, Galvanic Bomb is not going to have the Confusion in it, which, you know, we're still evaluating with this patch, and other things we'll mention in the patch we're still evaluating. So maybe Confusion will work its way back onto the skill for just PvE, or Firebomb will get that damage put into it, and Concussion Bomb or Galvanic Bomb now will stay just the days.
Someone in chat said, "What's a finisher?" All right, I don't know if they're being serious or not. However, just to make sure everyone's included in the conversation, in Guild Wars 2. There are combo things, like if you look at this tooltip here, near the bottom, it says combo field water, okay? This, near the bottom, says combo field blast. If you make a field and then use a finisher on it, did you see there was a ripple? That was a combo. So because of that, it did an explosion of healing around my character. There are dozens of different combos in the game, and if you do a combo field, it can be any kind of field, and then you do a combo finisher on it, it will do something, depending on what the combination is.
But we're still thinking about some of these changes and the exact fine details. But moving down to Smoke Bomb, the skill is now instant, and it's been moved up to the tool belt slot. And so basically, this skill, and again, with Flamethrower, a lot of similar changes, we want the defensive skills to be on the tool belt so they're more easily accessible. I just feel better to always have to press them and not have to go into a kit and then press them to get the active defenses from your abilities. And in its place in the 4 slot is Magnet Bomb. Magnet Bomb was a skill previously only accessible through the kit traits in tools. Streamline kits drop in Magnet Bomb, but now it is a skill you're able to use. It sets an explosive that pulls in enemies at a delay. So you're going to get a pull in as well into your other bombs.
And obviously, pull very powerful when you have a bunch of pulsing AoEs, right? You know, at least one with Firebomb.
Yep. And then lastly, Big Ol' Bomb, which was the old tool belt, is now being moved to the 5th slot, replacing Glue Bomb. So Glue Bomb's kind of completely gone. Now Big Ol' Bomb's there. Getting a couple tweaks to make it better. It's now going to knock down instead of launching people, because when you're putting all these AoEs below you, you don't really want to knock them.
Can finishers make DPS numbers go up? It can. Like as a simple one, if you're a ranger with a bow and you're shooting an arrow, but the arrow passes through a fire field, the arrow will catch on fire, and now it's a flaming arrow, and now it does a bit of burning, right? Like that's a super simplified example, but yes, combos can make your damage go up, your healing go up, give you utility, all kinds of stuff.
Away from you, so it's just going to knock them down, and now getting new functionality that's going to combo blast finishers twice. So if you have like a water field in there, going to get double heal, double stealth field, double might. Could be a pretty interesting skill how you use it, and getting a slight increase in range.
You know, the explosion is so big it has to be at least 2 blast finishers.
Right.
Moving on, we have these flamethrower changes that you were alluding to. So
Thank you, Keegan.
as well.
Yep, going down here, Flame Blast, this is kind of more of a quality of life of the skill. It did some damage when it passed through people, but that was kind of hard or annoying to use, so now all the damage is going to be on its explosion, which is getting increased a little bit. Smoke Vent, like we talked about, Smoke Bomb is getting moved to the tool belt slot, so this will be a stun break that you have always access to, which makes it a lot better. Napalm was previously a skill that you just like put down a line of fire, and when people stood in the line for like all 8 seconds, it's like, wow, this skill does a lot of damage, but in a lot of places in the game, they don't do that. So it's being changed, it's being moved to the 5th slot and then reworked. So it'll be now kind of like, think of it like a supercharged auto attack. The attack will burn on each hit, it'll be larger range, do more damage, so it's going to be kind of your burst skill. Something you want to do with Flamethrower is a lot of its power in some game modes was in the auto attack, and it was kind of like just there for the auto attack. So we're trying to take power, put it into these other skills, and then, like I said, maybe nerf the auto a bit for like World v World, where Flamethrower is already popular, so that the power can be in these discrete skills that you want to press. And lastly, a new skill in Flamethrower, Stoke the Flames. It's kind of like a self-stim skill that you're going to want to press before you do some bursts. It's going to give you might and quickness and then burn nearby enemies. There's like a small fire field attached to this because we still want people to be able to blast might with a kit. But it's something you press when you're about to do a burst with the new napalm, or you get them with a flame blast, or even just spam some more autos. So that's kind of the identity for the skill.
Kind of like a
So Smoke Vent, I believe that one blinds any enemies that are near you. So that one's now going to be on the tool belt. So any engineer with a flamethrower will always have access to this on the belt, whether they have the flamethrower in hand or not. This used to be incendiary ammunition, which was on the tool belt, and they would use it, and their next, like, I don't know, like 5 shots would do a big burn.
Get well soon, Mr. Mukluk Pat.
Thank you, Nezuko. Appreciate you. So it used to be you could use it with any weapon. Like, you could activate this and then do, like, pistol 2, and then that would use, like, all the charges and do, like, a whole bunch of dot stuff like that. But now it's going to be moved over and changed to Stoke the Flames. So it certainly sounds like you just hit Stoke the Flames right before you use Napalm for a big burst. Don't know how the consistent damage is going to be. It might just be good for some silly fun in PvP. Unless they change it. The Flamethrower kit has had a few traits that buff it that have been around for years that are really good. Like, one of them gives you a stack of stability that lasts 3 seconds every 3 seconds. So it makes it very noob friendly, and you can just run around in Unga Bunga. And then the one that gives you, like, might stacks while you're in Flamethrower. So it wasn't that the Flamethrower was ever, like, an insanely powerful weapon, but it allows you a lot of uptime because it was difficult to stop you unless they hit you with 2 CCs within a 3-second period while you were doing it.
Similar change to the Glyph of Elemental Power, where we saw, like, those burning stacks on hit with incendiary ammo.
Oh, yeah, and then
making that more of a...
I believe Flame Blast was the skill that fired, like, a lava ball thing, and then when you tapped it again, it would explode. So in an ideal situation, if you fired it and it hit an enemy and passed through them and then went out the back of them and then you clicked it again and it would explode behind them. But it was kind of tricky to do that in all fights. It wasn't always practical.
Brief moment of a burst of fire happens, and it's like more easy to avoid. It's not going to happen instantly, all those good things. Add some counterplay, while also just adding the damage to the game.
Last small change for Flamethrower is its trait Juggernaut is being moved to the Master tier, replacing Pinpoint Distribution. The pulsing nature of this...
Hang on. Crap! Okay, so that was the thing I was just telling you about.
Stability on Juggernaut wasn't something we were a really big fan of, so we're changing it so it's no longer going to pull stability, but instead give you stability and Fire Aura when you specifically activate Napalm. So Napalm is that big channel skill that's going to do a lot of damage where you want stability, you want to be interrupted. So we're giving it there instead of it's going to be a pulsing thing. But because it's like a little less strong, it is moving down to the Master tier, replaced by a trait that we'll get into it for a second.
It's not until the next slide. So I'm going to
It's moving down to the Master tier, replaced by...
Alright, this trade's moving to the Master tier, replacing Pinpoint Distribution. The skill no longer pulses stability, and instead grants stability and Fire Aura when you use Napalm. Wait, what? So wait, what? They're making it a trait that only works with a specific weapon skill of a specific kit? What?
By a trait that we'll get into it for a second.
It's not until the next slide. So I'm going to say a quick thing about Juggernaut. There's like a really weird interaction that some people in chat might be aware of, where like when you went into Flamethrower, it started like the stability pulse timer, and then as long as you were in Flamethrower when that timer expired, it would give you stability. So you could like be in Flamethrower, swap out to do something else, and then as long as you were in Flamethrower when that interval ended, it would give you stability. Just like a really weird interaction that, on top of just pulsing stability in general, there's like really weird incentives on how you would play with the Flamethrower to maximize the value of Juggernaut. So this rework just makes it just a lot healthier, a lot more... I don't know what word I'm looking for, like normalizing the gameplay around it. But let's move into grenade stuff.
These are some smaller changes for kits. Grenade kit is getting its velocity baseline. A lot of the time, taking grenades in competitive modes, you needed Grenadier. It was kind of unplayable without because they were super slow, so if anything moved, you couldn't hit them. Now, making that baseline grenade kit, you do not need Grenadier.
Okay, so basically by default, when you throw a grenade, the grenade like arcs slowly through the air, and by the time it lands on the ground, the enemy is no longer standing where you threw it if you're in PvP. So you needed to be good enough to be able to constantly guess where they were about to go and throw it in front of them. And there was a trait you could take which increased the velocity, how fast the grenade would move through the air, and they're saying that they're just baking that in. You no longer have to take that trait now.
To make it playable. Grenadier is still going to be a bit valuable. It does still increase the radius, so if you take Grenade Kit without Grenadier, your aim has to be a bit more on point, but we wanted to see this kit playable without the specific explosives trait. Another small change, Fumigate is now going to remove condition from the user when initially activated. That's something we did with Guardian Forge 5. That cleanse.
Oh, nice. Okay, so Fumigate is on the Elixir gun, and it's the one that just goes blarg, and it just sprays all the green crap in front of you. It just shoots jello everywhere. Very powerful skill. It condition cleanses in front of you in a cone many times over a couple of seconds. So it does many condition cleanses. However, I don't believe it hit you yourself first, like beforehand. I could be wrong on that. I don't think it did, but now it's saying it is going to condition cleanse you when you hit the button, and then cleanse everyone in front of you many times over the next few seconds.
This is a lot from allies, but I didn't really do anything for you. So it's going to cleanse like 2 conditions when you start activating it, just to be a bit more useful when you're by yourself.
Right, some more traits.
Yep, this is going into some.
Fumigate also poisons enemies in front of you, but it was never usually about that. It was usually about the condition cleansing. Hematic Focus has been reworked to gain Fury when you inflict bleeding on an enemy. Fury has increased effectiveness. Okay. Equal and opposite reaction. The new Firearms Grandmaster trait grants quickness and stability when you disable an enemy.
Some of the trait reworks, this is targeting the Firearms line. Hematic Focus being slightly reworked. It's going to give you Fury when you bleed an enemy, and Fury has increased effectiveness. Before this trait was that you have increased crit chance against bleeding enemies, but the add-up trait in PvP, how in competitive modes, how it's balanced, the bleeding duration was super low, so you couldn't really get a lot of value out of this trait. So now, with it giving you Fury and having increased effectiveness, the value will be a lot more comparable in competitive modes as it was in PvE, and thus making the Firearms line a lot more appealing for DPS compared to explosives. And this new trait will also help with it. The new Grandmaster that's replacing Juggernauts is called Equal and Opposite Reaction. It's going to grant you quickness and stability when you disable an enemy. So a lot of the traits in Firearms, if you were like a DPS build in competitive modes where you couldn't stack up a lot of conditions to get good modified ammo, they were pretty unappealing. So we wanted to add one that a DPS build would take that's not exactly just a damage modifier. And so Equal and Opposite will give you quickness, kind of like the Warrior trait that we see people enjoying, and also some stability access, so you can follow up on that CC.
I will say, for PvP, I got no problem with any of these changes. For PvE, I think it is unfortunate that it seems like they might be killing one of the noob-friendly early game builds, which was, Flamethrower go blarg, as Laura would say. It seems like that one is getting dumpstered by these changes. Which, there's a lot of noob-friendly builds out there, but it's sad to see that one go. And for those who don't know, spamming Flamethrower was never really effective at endgame PvE. Just the damage numbers were not that high, but it was very easy to play. It was easily sustainable. It was something that any noob could do and do about the same performance on. Noob-friendly as mech these days. Well, not all noobs own End of Dragons. We're talking about stuff you can do from like level 10, but. All right, keep watching. We'll see.
Another trait getting reworked is Iron-Blooded. It's now being reworked into Chain Reactivity. When you finish a field with a blast or leap finisher, you get Barrier, and then every third trigger of this trait gets a larger barrier in might. So we wanted this to be a self-sustained trait, Grandmaster for Alchemy trait line, because we felt like between HGH and Purity of Purpose, supports had pretty good options, but if you want to take the Alchemy trait line and you weren't like loaded up on some elixirs to get value of HGH, Iron-Blooded was really not what you wanted. So adding a new trait to potentially take Alchemy for builds that don't have a ton of elixirs taking HGH.
Successfully finishing a field with a blast or leap finisher grants you a barrier. Every third trigger of this trait grants a larger barrier in might. Okay. I wonder if you use that big old bomb that has double finisher, if that will give you 2 of your 3 for this trait, if it'll count for 2.
Should be really fun for everyone who enjoys blasting and leaping.
Yep. Gadgeteer, another Grandmaster getting some slight tweaks to it. It's now going to change the benefits it gives to both Utility Goggles and Slick Shoes. It's going to cause Slick Shoes to break stun, grant stability instead of cripple.
Slick Shoes will break stun and grant stab instead of crippling foes. What? It's called Slick Shoes because it leaves slick oil all over the ground and the enemy slips in it. What do you mean it's not going to cripple them? That's the whole point! You better still knock them down. And cause Utility Goggles to grant barrier instead of protection. That's fine. I got no problem with that part.
Crippling foes, which is a lot better. Slick Shoes, 40-second cooldown, pretty high, and then also taking a Grandmaster for it, making it give you a break stun, seems pretty good. And then Utility Goggles is going to grant barrier instead of protection. A couple patches ago, we put protection baseline on Utility Goggles. This one will give you more. So it's not going to give you barrier for more in-the-moment defense than over time.
Yeah, I think we really like the idea.
Muck, you're getting too loud. Jackals. I've had it up to here with you. I am sick as a dog. And I am still here at work today, clocked in to bring you the news. I would appreciate if you got off my back. Let's continue.
With Gadgeteer, we're like overcharging, supercharging your gadgets is really cool and interesting for builds that want to play a lot of gadgets. It's just some of these bonuses just weren't up to par with the others. So we can move into Guardian next. Got some updates to the Greatsword. Pretty big rework to Ray of Judgment. That ideally maintains a lot of the value that it has right now. We'll talk about that very shortly. And then, as with most professions, we see some tweaks to skills
I sure hope they buff Guardian. It's been feeling a bit underpowered last few years.
and traits. Let's start off with the Greatsword changes. We have Leap of Faith getting a nice little bump on the healing in the first hit. We are adding the reduced healing on additional hits that we see on so many skills like this. We basically want the skill to feel good when you're
Thank you, Legal.
only hitting one target without blowing out too hard when you're hitting multiple targets. So, pretty big bump here, about 1,000 to 1.75k.
Okay, hold on. Leap of Faith, increase the healing by almost double. Additional hits now heal for a lesser amount. Symbol of Resolution now does additional damage on the first hit. Okay, so they're front-loading another skill. That's fine. That's normal. Binding Blade, projectiles from the skill can now only hit their original target. The debuff from this skill now stacks when applied by different sources. Wait. Oh, wait. Hold on. Binding Blade skill can now only hit their original target. Does that mean it's not AoE anymore? Increase the maximum pull distance from 450 to 750. Increase the power coefficient. Wait, so it's a single target but longer range pull. Alright, so it's like the Engineer Magnet pull on Greatsword now. Okay. I'm not against this. It's interesting. It's going to change a bit. Like, for example, I know in when I join groups that are like blasting through Nightmare Fractal Challenge mode, they routinely use Greatsword on Guardian to like just pull all the packs together and just delete them in 2 seconds. Stuff like that. It's going to be different. But in PvP, if a Guardian's trying to assassinate you, he's going to have a very, very slightly easier time.
Okay, 17.5 might be a little high. But just a little bit extra value, add some more sustain, a little bit more defense to the Greatsword. And, hopefully fills... I'm really struggling with words today for some reason. Just the nerves of running the stream are getting to me. But a little bit extra defense for Greatsword feels pretty good. Similar Resolution. This is another skill like we've seen with Firebomb, getting some extra damage on the first strike. We've talked about this a lot already as to why we're doing that, so we won't really reiterate it here, but same thing for Symbol of Resolution.
Couldn't you abuse it before by all the projectiles hitting the boss? I haven't tried that myself. If it's like Spectral Grasp, then yes. Spectral Grasp, you would fire a pull at your target and also 4 nearby targets, 5 targets total. So if you were standing inside of the Bone Skinner's hitbox and there was 4 ads around the room and you would use it, the projectiles would go out, but since you were right under him, he would get hit times 5. And then that would be 5 CCs hitting him, so lots of CCs. Assuming Binding Blade worked the same way, then yes. I just don't have personal experience with that.
And the last change here for Binding Blade, updating it so that the projectiles from the skill will only hit their intended target, so the original target as you're throwing the projectile is the only one that the projectile will hit. Obviously, you can still dodge it, destroy it, all those things. But you can't get the really, weird situation or, the everyone's favorite situation where you just have 5 enemies nearby and you get a bunch of Binding Blades that all hit one enemy and do a ton of damage to them. Obviously pretty powerful. It's not really something that we're happy with, so we are changing the skill so that you will only hit your intended targets, but we are increasing the damage here to make up the difference. And
wait. Okay, hold on. No. All right, so I think it's still going to hit 5 people, but if you stand in the middle of one hitbox, it's not going to have 5 bolts hit one guy. All right. So, assuming it still hits 5 different targets, they're just getting a range increase on the pull. So now it's Spectral Grasp, but it hits hard?
Also, increasing that pull distance, gives you more opportunity to pull people into your Symbol of Resolution, pull people into your Whirling Wrath, and just do all the great damage that Greatsword deals.
Yeah, small note on the pull distance is this actually 750 was the range that the blade would fall off before. That's not changing. It said 600, but that was kind of a lie. It was actually 750. So this is just making sure that if you have a blade on someone, they'll be pulled fully to you instead of just halfway sometimes. And also, before interrupting, I'm realizing that because we don't know if our amazing stream runner forgot a slide, there are some hollow changes coming in this patch that will be in the preview.
Do you guys remember recently when they said that Spectral Grasp was getting its range nerfed because reasons? And so many people complained that they backed down and said never mind. And now, just like a month later, they're giving Spectral Grasp to Binding Blade? Except it does damage? That shoe went on the other foot real quick. That was fast.
For V3, The first one is to Vent Exhaust, the Grandmaster trait. We're adding Vigor to it on dodge. So it's a trait that you want to dodge a lot for, so it'll get a bit more dodging on it. The second is Holographic Shockwave, which is Hollow Forge 5. Now when you leap up in the air, it's also going to be an evade. It's a pretty high cost, I think 25%. So paying that high cost for CC is also strong, but also being able to be a strong defensive tool felt like it'd be interesting. And lastly, Prime Light Beam's damage on the impact in PvP is going from 1.0 to 1.5, so 50% more. I really want that to have a high impact. So sorry for that little detour, but those will be in the preview post if you didn't catch that.
Those are some important changes, so it's a shame that this slide was missed, but that's totally fine.
I tell you what, hang on. All right, so I've got the upcoming patch notes right here. Hollow Smith. They said they accidentally skipped Hollow. Holographic Shockwave. This skill now evades. That is when they are in their Hollow Forge, and that is the 5 skill. Okay. And Prime Light Beam. Increase the initial power coefficient from 1.0 to 1.5 in PvP. Oh boy. Alright. I remember when I was a young PvPer, I got nailed by this skill so many times because I kept trying to block it. Yeah. No, new players, don't try to block this. Get out of the freaking way. Vent Exhaust. This trait now grants Vigor on dodge in addition to its previous effects. Okay.
Orb of Wrath. Projectiles fired by the skill now track their target. This is, as we're looking at Scepter, is kind of like one of the weaker, underperforming weapons for Guardian. We kind of identified that the issue is that outside of skill 2, there's not a ton of damage, just because Orb of Wrath is so unreliable. And we want to make sure that, you know, we're not going to like add a bunch of damage to Chains of Light or increase the damage where it's already good. So we want to make sure that Orb of Wrath was like a reliable skill, so it's going to track target. Obviously, it's still like a super fast projectile. Should be still pretty avoidable. We'll definitely keep an eye on the damage that it's able to do with the new functionality and tone it down if needed. But we felt like having a reliable projectile was more important, and we'll find the right balance point with this projectile being removed.
So Orb of Wrath is just the auto attack. That's just the one. Did it not have, like, some amount of tracking? Like, for example, if you're firing a Ranger longbow or a Ranger shortbow or a throwing axe at a target, and that target's moving perpendicular to you... Oh, shoot, Warrior Mains. If it's moving from left to right, like, you're gonna hit it. Like, this thing would miss? That surprises me. I didn't know that.
Reliable, as opposed to having a skill that maybe does a bit too much damage if you always are like right on.
Like, I'm not talking insane homing. I'm not talking like you fire a shot and then they teleport behind you and the shot makes a U-turn and hits them. I just mean like that tiny bit of homing so that it follows them if they're just walking or running in any direction.
Top of someone, for example. And then Chains of Light, just getting a nice little cooldown reduction, a little bit more utility for the Scepter, you know, more mobilizes, a little bit more vulnerability.
You could just sidestep it? That's crazy. That's insane.
Set up your symbol.
Buff Guardians. I didn't know they had it so bad.
Punishment a bit more reliably. Nice little update for line of wording here. Cast time going down, you know, over half, 0.6 seconds off. It's going to be pretty close to unsteady ground on Elementalist now. And, you know, this is just a skill where I felt like cast time is a bit too long. Obviously, you can still kind of lead your target to place it in the proper location, but, you know, you still have to place it correctly, and there's still going to be a cast time there, which felt like it was a bit too long.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about Ray of Judgment?
Yeah, so Ray of Judgment, we are changing it to kind of be an interesting middle ground. I don't know if you've played this game for a long time, you know that Ray of Judgment, a long time ago, it was like a little like ribbon you threw out that like bounced, blinded, and it did some things. It was kind of a support. You had it on focus, but basically when Ray of Judgment became its current version, Focus's identity was primarily a DPS offhand, but then with the advent of Offhand Sword, which is also a DPS offhand and kind of more interesting, we felt like we wanted to push Focus back into a more utilitarian identity, because it has Shield of Wrath, which will...
Wait, hold on. So Ray of Judgment was the focus... is either 4 or 5, one of the two. Someone will tell me. It was the focus skill on Guardian that basically called down the giant laser. And if you dodge the beginning of it, you dodge the whole thing. But if you didn't dodge the beginning of it, the whole thing was hitting you. And it was the big space laser from the sky, and it would just do lots of hits and lots of burning stacks usually. But now, the skill now strikes a ground-targeted area. Allies in the area are cleansed of a condition and are granted regeneration. Enemies struck have a ray of light attached to them that deal continuous damage. Reduces the number of impacts from 9 to 6. Increase the damage coefficient from 0.45 to 0.675 in PvE. I'm going to be honest, as a support enjoyer, that looks fun as hell. That looks like a lot of fun. So, you got many Jarvis space lasers, but also half of a healing spring that just drops from the air? I know that people that are just like, high DPS, I know some of them are not going to like this, but that looks fun to me. I like that.
Blocking and dealing damage is a pretty good middle ground. So Ray of Judgment's also going to try and seek a middle ground. So what it'll be now is it's a targeted area where you select it, and then a beam of light will rain down, and then allies in the area will cleanse a condition and are healed. And then enemies are blinded, and then get basically a mini version of the current Ray of Judgment attached to them. So because more targets, we're reducing the number of impacts down from 9 to 6, because with Guardian, they're on hit, that can get kind of crazy if you were to attach a full version. Increasing the damage, so in PvE is equivalent, but hoping that
Focus should never have been a DPS weapon. Well, I mean, if you're focusing your lasers, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
You can see a new niche of more utility where you do want some damage, but also having some defense like a block and a cleanse are more appreciated than just full damage.
It's kind of a mashup of the two versions of Ray of Judgment that have existed. That Shield of Wrath cooldown reduction. You know, this feels pretty good, but you could use a little bit more. It would be better.
Yep.
Yeah, we do want to see a bit more focus, so we identified Shield of
More focus.
Wrath as something where it's like, you know, it's pretty close to balanced, but I think it will still be fine at 25 seconds. So let's, you know, bring it down and see if that, in combination with the new Ray of Judgment, kind of brings focus to the forefront a bit more.
We need Healbender buffs. Healbender is an interesting beast. Last time I played Healbender... Okay, so this information might be a few months out of date. I don't know if anything's changed. But Healbender is the easiest to play effective healer in the game, in my opinion, last I checked. It is like, you can literally go in there with a hammer and just auto-attack and maybe press like one other button on occasion, and you're doing constant healing and cleansing for your whole team nonstop. But if, you know, big damage starts coming in, you need to know a little bit more of how to play the game. But it's very, very good training wheels. But if you're trying to make it, you know, if you're suggesting like changes to make it like a more serious competitive thing, maybe. I think I've heard it's been used in some Harvest Temple CMs. But that was, I heard it from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of Bob. So I can't attest to that.
Got some updates to utility skills here. Signet of Wrath is now going to have the burning on it. It's obviously has the Conti damage passive, so it's a bit more of that offensive option. The burning here makes a bit more sense than on Signet of Judgment, which we see below is not going to do burning anymore. Now it's going to have blind weakness to kind of play into that more defensive identity of the skill. Now it's like a pretty interesting stun break where you kind of get that. You get the stun break, you get the blind, you get some weakness. Obviously, a pretty decent passive as well. Could see a bit more play. And Shield of the Avenger getting a pretty nice update here with it's going to be granting some protection to allies within its area in addition to its previous effects.
They totally copied that from my baby Siege Turtle. His bubble also grants protection in the area.
And one final update here, Heavy Light. What's going on here, Taylor?
Heavy Light was a trait that was interesting. It was one of the first traits that also applied like on Disable and Defiant, something we do a lot now. So it had its splits, but then now most traits are merged. Instead of merging it together, we thought it'd be more interesting if we could try this new functionality with Heavy Light that's also going to apply its disabled bonus damage to enemies that are exposed. So a lot of the time when you break a break bar in PvE, they'll get exposed. Sometimes they'll be CC'd and you're already getting this bonus, but other times they won't. So now for specific bosses, that this trait will be like even more burst potentially. So trying to see if this is like an interesting idea. If it is, we might apply it in more places in the game. If not, then it'll stay how it is. But trying to play around with exposed a bit, see how it goes.
All right, moving on to Mesmer next. What's going on here?
Couple things. One thing, interrupt trait adjustments. This is something that was happening in Thief, spoiler alert as well, is changing interrupts to, instead of punishing enemies more, give more bonus and agency to the player that interrupted. And then going on to Chronomancer Master Tier, a while ago, crit damage was put on Improved Alacrity, and that was a trait everyone clicked on. So trying to make that not the case anymore. And then Mirage trait reworks is doing some shifts on how Mirage plays, and hopefully trying to open up new playstyles for Mirage outside of Infinite Horizons and PvE.
All right, so let's kick things off with some updates to staff.
Yep, before we go into the other things I mentioned, staff and competitive.
Okay, so these are all buttons on Mesmer staff, and they're all getting reduced cooldown times in competitive game modes.
So it's getting some cooldown reductions. These are really high, and staff has not seen a lot of play in a while, so we're using them baseline, and they will still go down further if traded for the staff cooldown trait in Chaos.
So I hope you guys have practiced your about face phase retreats, because now you can do it slightly more often.
Yep, and then these are the interrupt traits.
Real quick, so for new players who don't know what that is, when you use phase retreat, you teleport backwards, like, I don't know, 20 feet or something. Oh, shoot, Europeans. I don't know, 6 meters. Anyway, if you have the about face button bound, and if you want to teleport forwards, you simply hit about face, phase retreat, about face. That way, you turn your back in the direction you want to go, teleport backwards, and then turn your back again. It's a little entangling on the fingers, but if you master that, you can use phase retreat to go in any direction. Also, the moves like Well, it's not as a big of a thing anymore. A ranger, the sword, used to have one of its skills would launch you backwards, and same thing. You could do about face and then that and go forwards. And short bow 3 on ranger also launches you backwards. So you can use about face to launch you forwards instead. So if you're new, it's a button in the settings. You just got to assign a key binding to it, and it's something you can play with. If you have any skills that launch you forward or backwards, you can use about face to go the other direction.
Furious Interruption, which currently grants just quickness when you interrupt, will also get Might to make it even more powerful. There's some powerful master traits in that line, so want to compete better with them. And then Power Block is getting a slight tweak to how it works. It's no longer going to increase the cooldown of interrupted skills, and now grant the Mesmer a damage bonus when you interrupt an enemy. So this was a trait that's kind of like how we mentioned Flashbang, also frustrating to play around. Power Block.
2025 Muck, road to VTuber. Look, you don't. My face is melting off. You don't want to see me right now. I will say I'm totally. I totally. Hold on. Come here. I totally get the appeal of this, right? I totally get the appeal of this. Like, I am just a disgusting mess of a human right now, and you guys don't even know how many clothes I may be wearing. I could be wearing all the clothes or none of the clothes. I don't know. You don't know. I mean, I'm so medicated right now. I don't even know. Well, I'm just saying. Like, I see the appeal. Just roll out of bed, looking like absolute death. Come over to the computer, put the anime girl up in front of me, and then there we go. Get to business. You know, don't even worry about the long commute of 30 seconds down the stairs. It's fine. I see the appeal. I do.
Also really frustrating to play around, so instead of making it frustrating for the enemy, we're going to make it feel better for the player, hopefully. It's still going to do the damage and weakness it does now, but now when you see interrupt, it'll say in your mind, okay, it's go time to burst, I got this damage bonus on me. So that in coordination with Furious Interruption could be a lot of bonuses at once for an interrupt proc, so hopefully more interesting to play around.
Yeah, you know, generally, there's already a cooldown that the skill goes on when it's interrupted. Doesn't really need to be significantly higher. Yeah, we still feel like the window of opportunity you have is good, especially now with the extra damage bonus. It should feel better for both the interrupter and the interruptee, I suppose.
Yep. Small trait rework here. Evasive Mirror is now being changed to Wandering Mind. You'll cleanse the damaging condition and gain swiftness when you evade an attack. Before, Evasive Mirror a long time ago had like good uptime on the Reflect, and it was like terrible to play around, so it got nerfed to be like really low uptime, and then it was hard to track. And so we're making this trait feel a bit better to take and give some bit more utility in that tier as well to be a more interesting choice.
You know, Ranger has a trait where when they evade an attack, they cleanse a condition, but they don't get swiftness.
Moving on to the Chronomancer.
Yep, this is what I talked about. Skipping to the bottom, improved alacrity is no longer going to increase your critical strike damage.
Did he just say skibbity bop?
Moving on to the Chronomancer.
Yep, this is what I talked about. Skipping to the bottom, improved alacrity is no longer going to increase your critical strike damage. And we're taking the power budget that was there and putting in a Flow of Time, the minor tier trait. It's now going to increase your critical strike chance for you and your illusions when you are under the effect of alacrity. So that's taking the critical strike damage, giving it back in power as critical strike chance to hopefully make it easier to crit cap as Mesmer, like Virtuoso does. And then as well as that, we're touching the other master tier traits. Danger time is changing from a critical strike chance to critical strike damage. Danger time's uptime previously wasn't high enough. It was hard to get slow uptime enough that you wanted to crit cap around it. So now you don't have to do that. It's not going to give you critical strike damage. To hopefully be an interesting burst option if you can get that slow uptime. And then illusionary reversion. It used to be really powerful trait and then got knocked down. And so now we're trying to add alacrity in addition to its previous effects. So when you shatter 3 clones, we get a clone back and some alacrity. Hopefully make it more interesting for builds that want to take that.
Probably self-alacrity only, right?
Yes.
Where is Mukluk? I melted, and so I'm borrowing me Muck today.
All right, moving on to Mirage. Some more reworks.
Yep, Mirage getting some changes. The big one is Mirage Mantle is getting completely reworked. All it will do now is cause ambush skills you use to grant boons to nearby allies. And those boons in PvE, it is alacrity. This is how you're going to be giving alacrity on Mirage. And in competitive mode, it's going to be bigger. Important thing to note with this trait is it will only affect yourself. So you will give the same amount of alacrity no matter if you have infinite horizons with clones or not. So we're kind of cutting that tie there and also making it so alacrity is no longer tied to staff. We want to... having a boon application like that tied to a weapon wasn't really something other classes have, and it kind of like was struggling with Mirage, made it kind of weird, so we're untying that to hopefully make some more interesting build options. You can see Mirrored Axe, we're also doing the same, where it's no longer going to be an axe trait, it's called Phantom Pain. It'll cause shatters to grant you a damage bonus based on the number of illusions shattered. So it's basically going to be like, Berserker Power and Warrior gives you damage bonus for Bar of Adrenaline. It's going to be like that, except with clones. So there's going to be strike damage and condition damage. So before, Mirage Mantle also gave you a damage bonus for your spear, which is how Power Mirage worked. That bonus is basically being rolled into Phantom Pain. So there's going to be the damage trait you take for both condition and power Mesmer builds. Yeah, do we have anything? Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting change. That's one of those changes where kind of have to test it and see what the numbers are to know if it's a good or a bad one. Right now, it just...
One thing is that we know a lot of Axe's power budget was tied into this trait, and so while not listed here, we're still thinking about ways to buff Axe so that it doesn't like completely fall off. We want Axe to be a usable weapon, just be freed of having to take mirrored axes to be functioning. And lastly, Doomcloak is getting additional functionality that it causes your offensive shatters to be reduced when you gain Mirage Cloak. So Mind Rack and Cry Frustration are going to get some cooldown reduction when you get Mirage Cloak, and this trait already gives you Mirage Cloak if you shatter a certain amount of clones. So we're trying to really create an engine with this trait and hope that it can like pump out some damage. We want there to be a build in in-game PvE that you can play on Mirage that does not rely upon Infinite Horizons. Infinite Horizons is a super cool trait, and a lot of people love its playstyle, but a lot of people also don't like its playstyle, and so we're hoping that leaning into a more shatter-focused Mesmer and in-game PvE is possible with Doomcloak. Getting the balance right in this trait is something definitely want to keep our eye on, but we're hoping that with all of these changes, Mirage feels a lot less constrained on the weapons they have to take for what build, and the potential builds it can take are, varied with the 2 Grandmaster traits. And these are some small changes. Axis of Symmetry, clone casting the skill will no longer be interrupted when gaining Mirage Cloak. So if you had Infinite Horizons and you use a 3 skill, and then you dodge while the clones were doing their Axis of Symmetry, they interrupt themselves, you lose the damage from that hit so they can ambush. But now, basically, if you're going to gain Mirage Cloak while they're leaping forward, they're going to say, wait a minute, man, and then finish, and then they're going to ambush. So just to be a bit cleaner, because this was something that could be annoying, especially if you had...
That is really nice. It's been a while since I played my Mirage, but that was annoying. That if you tried to dodge something that was endangering you, it could not only lower your DPS on you, but lowered your DPS on your clones, because they would stop what they were doing to copy what you were doing. I like that. So they're giving them a queue system, where they have finished what they were doing, then they'll do the ambush after that. It'll go into like a queue. I like that. I do like that.
Ping, you would lose some damage there. Split Surge is getting its damage rolled baseline in PvE. This was the damage bonus that was on Mirage Mantle. So that's going to become baseline, so again, you can hopefully use Greatsword in more places. And there was also a weapon that had a long animation. And so if you tried to use...
I haven't seen it. It's just a Mirage thing. Because when Mirage, when they would get Mirage Cloak from their dodge, then the clones could also get it if you were running the right traits, and then you would do an ambush and the clones would do an ambush. So that's why it would make them interrupt. If you're playing like a core Mesmer, the clones aren't getting a Mirage Cloak from you, so it doesn't like mess up what they're doing in their sequences.
Back-to-back casts of this, when getting Mirage Cloak, there were times where you would use it once to go back into Mirage Cloak and it'd still be on cooldown. And so we're slightly lowering the cooldown just for Split Surge to hopefully make that less painful. And then Chaos Vortex, it's getting its boon radius increased to 480. This is to match what Mirage Mantle's radius is going to be. It's the same one as Let Loose on Ranger, so just a bit bigger.
Always nice. All right, we can move into Necro.
Ooh. Those first couple words scare me. All right. Buckle up.
And the first bullet point here is a little spicy. We got to rework to the Transfusion trait.
Spicy is right. You guys killed boon removal. You killed pulling down state people. You tried to kill Spectral Grasp. You killed Epidemic. Necromancer doesn't have a lot of class identity left after the last couple years. What do you got in store for us today?
I see some quality of life adjustments and some updates to Lich Form. So let's hop into it first. A lot of the quality of life aspects here, because we have to slow roll the Transfusion change as much as possible.
Life transfer, reduce the cast time of the skill, increase life force per hit from 0.5% to 1%. Okay, so it's faster. All right, so once again, a skill is kind of getting front-loaded, where if it gets interrupted in the middle, you've still done a good bit of whatever. Life transfer is Shroud, right? Isn't that the skill where it pulls bubbles from everyone around? Yes, yeah, I just double-checked. It's Shroud 4. Yeah, it just pulls the bubbles from everybody around you, and then it comes to you. Yeah, that was a fun skill. I like that one. Whale of Doom is Warhorn. That's the Doot. Summon Fleshworm. The skill will go on a reduced cooldown when being despawned due to mounting. Okay, it's like an open world quality of life thing, I guess. Signet of Suffering, increase the base life siphon from 651,000 to increase the base life siphon. Okay.
Life transfer, cast time going down. This is a skill that takes a very, very long time to cast, so we are trying to find the right number where it still feels like there is that opportunity cost into going into a big channeled skill, while still feeling like you aren't just channeling for so long, especially on a core skill like this being so important to the Shroud. We want to make sure that it is a bit more usable. Whale of Doom, aftercast produced. I think right now on live it's about a 1 second aftercast that you can't really do anything in. We're bringing that down pretty heavily. I think it's going to be around like 200 to 300 milliseconds aftercast now, pretty in line with a lot of other skills where we have reduced the aftercast. But once again, just make this skill a bit more usable and not feeling like you're just trapped in animation for so long. Fleshworm, nice little quality of life here. When you mount up, obviously the rest of your minions will kind of despawn and then respawn when you dismount. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense with Fleshworm as a stationary minion, but now that's going to be on a much lower cooldown when you dismount. Assuming it died because you mounted up and not just because it was on cooldown. And then Sickness of Suffering here.
Yeah, honestly, all right. This would be a really low priority. Like, it's not a huge thing. It wouldn't really help any competitive content. But what if, just like every other worm in the game with Summoned Fleshworm, what if when you mount, it just went underground, and then when you dismount, it comes back out of the ground, and it just appears right there? You know? Just have it relocate. Like, assuming that your other minions would come with you, let's let that one come with you too. Just be like an open world thing.
Here, another trait that just hasn't been seeing a whole lot of play. We feel like there's a pretty big amount of power here with the Boon Rip, but the life siphoning maybe not impactful enough to incentivize like those heavier signet builds. We have touched some of the signets in like previous patches, so we're trying to find the right balance of making those signets valuable enough skills and finding the right numbers on the trait here to make the trait feel appealing to those builds.
Relocate where? To wherever you... So what I'm saying is, if you mount, it graphically dives into the ground and vanishes. And then when you dismount, it respawns wherever you dismounted. That's what I was saying.
Bumping up the life ceiling pretty significantly. Maybe, you know, this
I'm just spitballing here, guys. It's just an idea.
is the right number that makes people more excited about playing Signet Necro. A nice little update for Harbinger in PvE, the blight health reduction going down a little bit. We've seen kind of recently a lot of these recent encounters, you would say, Taylor, that are a bit more punishing, especially to Harbinger, just being so reliant on having a good amount of blight on you, so it felt just a little bit too punishing. You know, we've seen this number go down in PvP as well, and it feels like there is still that opportunity cost, that trade-off to having blight on you, but not so much that it feels like you just fall over to a gust of wind.
Yep.
Still slow rolling the transfusion change. We do have...
So, sorry, I was typing, someone in chat asked a question, and I was typing a response. The Blight change is nice. Basically, it just means that Harbingers that stack up Blight will have more health than they did before. Not a bad change.
We've seen this number go down in PvP as well, and it feels like there is still that opportunity cost, that trade-off to having blight on you, but not so much that it feels like you just fall over to a gust of wind. Yep. Still slow rolling the transfusion change. We do have the updates to Lich Form here, if you want to talk about those, Taylor.
Yeah, so Lich Form, just baseline getting reduced 150 120 seconds in all game modes. Super high cooldown, but could be just a bit lower. This is a super impactful skill in a lot of places. We want to have a justified cooldown. But also, there were certain builds that want to take Lich Form that, you know, the current kit wasn't the most appealing. Like, if you were a Connie Necro that didn't want to take Plague Lands because it was too slow, we want to take Lich Form because some of the skills are good, but the other skills weren't. You'd, like, go in it, press all your skills, and...
All right, so real quick. Lich Form, very powerful skill, usually seen in PvP, if anywhere at all. However... it was kind of a running joke for a while that for many years of the game that a Condi Necro that went Lich would kill you. A Power Necro that went Lich would really kill you. Like, its base damage was so high that even a Condi Necro was dangerous in Lich form. But it did scale with power, and it would absolutely destroy people if you were power, like even more so. But they're adding bleeding onto the Deathly Claws, which is the 1 button. So that will add some scaling for both Condi and Power to the 1. Lich's Gaze was the 2 button. It fired like a little bolt that did stuff. Now it does Chilling and Boon Corruption. Oh boy.
And then leave immediately, and then having 150-second cooldown to that was like, it just felt way too long. So we're lowering it a bit, and also hopefully making those skills a bit more appealing. Deathly Claws, the auto attack is now going to inflict bleeding. I think 3 stacks for 3 seconds was the front, just making it so those auto attacks have some impact, even if you are a more condition-focused build. So there's something that like super deadly on power builds. We want that to be just as impactful on the condition builds that choose to take Lich form as well. And then Lich's Gaze is getting completely reworked. Before it was like a skill that you just like press randomly, and it would shoot like some projectile that did nothing at a random target. It was really bad. So now we're adding a new skill here that fires a projectile at your target that chills and corrupts boons on hit. So if you can think about it, like it's gonna be like a Core Shroud Dark Path with passive corruption. It's pretty good. It has like an 8-second cooldown, so you get like 2 uses out of it. If you land the chill and corrupt, it's gonna be super punishing, and then continue using some Deathly Claws on people. So hoping that people go into Lich form on the condition build, they still want to stay in there to get all the value out of it.
Yep. All right.
Yo, I thought I had like accidentally hit a key and paused it for a second. They just went like dead quiet for like 5 seconds.
Moving on. Transfusion. Here it is. Obviously, Transfusion is...
All right, shut up, Cal. I'm reading. This trait has been reworked. Marks can now be triggered by allies and will heal and... Wait, what? Marks can now be triggered by allies and will heal and grant additional supportive effects to allies when triggered. Like staff marks? Create a Chillblains at your location when you use Shroud Skill 4. Okay. Mark of Blood grants vigor to allies in the area. It used to give regen. Does it give both now? Or does it only give vigor? Chillblains heals and grants protection in the area. Okay, so it says additional supportive effects. All right, so I'm assuming it will still do the original stuff. So Mark of Blood would hurt enemies. I think it put bleed on enemies, and then it would put regen on allies. And now it will give vigor to allies. Chillblains, which before did chill and poison to enemies, now also grants protection to allies. Putrid Mark removes conditions to allies in the area. So Putrid Mark was the one that would take all the condies on you and send them to the enemy. It was the Return to Sender skill. Removes conditions to allies in the area. So it's a condi cleanse. So that's cool. Question is how many conditions? Reaper's Mark is the 5, which would fear enemies, and now it gives stability in the area. Interesting. Necro has more stab than just Piss Walk now. Piss Walk? Wow. Necro was given more stab on one of their skills just recently. I forget which one. But they've already got. Was it a Scourge skill? Someone remind me. One of their skills recently was given stability. So they've had more than the walk for a little while now. But yeah, this is an additional one. That's interesting. It was trail. Oh, was it a pulse on the trail? Because I remember it used to be you had to walk through the trail. Maybe now it's just a pulse. Okay. All right. So the 4 and the 5 you probably save for when you need them. The 2 and the 3, depending on the uptime of protection, you might just spam the 2 and the 3. Sorry, Mark is the 2, Chillblains is the 3, Putrid is the 4, Reaper is the 5. I'm guessing you're going to spam the 2 and the 3, and then the 4 and the 5 as needed.
Kind of a hot topic over the last however long, whatever time period you want to evaluate Transfusion over. We made some pretty big adjustments to this trait in the past, and those changes were certainly necessary for like the health of the game and making sure that.
All right, so hold on. That means though the Transfusion, the old stuff it did is gone, which is Shroud Skill 4, which used to pull allies to you, then start reviving them. Then they got rid of the pull. Now it just heals and starts reviving them. And now it doesn't do any of that. From read as written here, it looks like just all of that's gone.
The trait wasn't like super overperforming, but it did feel like the current version of the trait is maybe, it's lost some of the exciting component of it at the same time. It's more of like that just general healing revive trait now. And as we're evaluating like support necro builds, and not only for Scourge, but all of the builds that might want to have a more supportive weapon, there's not really a second supportive weapon. We've kind of been toying around with like which weapons are valuable for support necro, but there's never been like a really strong, dedicated other weapon to go to. So we've identified like staff as kind of the interesting point where that could be the case. And
they turned the AoE heal into staff marks being able to AoE heal instead. So staff marks can... Okay, I've PvP'd as a necro. Let's say you're fighting an enemy and they get knocked down, and you put a mark on them. They won't trigger it. Downstate players in-game right now will not trigger your marks. Now, if you are in a pile of people, and one of those, let's say Billy, frickin' Billy, let's say Billy goes down, and you throw a mark on the pile of people, someone in that pile will set the mark off. All right, that'll happen. I don't think the Chillblains heal will hit the downstate. And the reason I don't believe that is because if I'm playing my Druid, and I do a big AoE heal, and Billy's down, that heal doesn't just revive him. It doesn't work that way. So I think Chillblains will be a nice schmexy heal for the team. It's not a replacement for the revive heal that was lost. A revive heal is different from a standing heal. If it's just a heal, it's not going to hit downed people. It is a trade-off. It's not just a nerf. It is a trade-off. There are cons and there are pros to this. Now, I personally think this is a very interesting and cool idea. However, I am sad to see that Necromancer, like the whole idea of a Necromancer, right, is just, it's a healer that got there late, you know? And they seem to be taking more and more and more of that interesting, like, the whole thing for a long time was a Necromancer is not a good at a healer, but they are the best in game at saving you from the brink of death. And that seemed very in character for a Necromancer, and I loved that. And they keep taking more of that away. I will say one of the coolest things, because right now, what do they have? Right? What do they have? They've got the Well of Blood res. Freaking, it's terrible. It's a little bit, but it's terrible. They've got the Lesser Well of Blood res. Same thing. It's a little bit, but it's terrible. You usually stack them both because they're so bad on their own. And even then, it's eh. And then there is the Signet that reses. Almost every support has a Signet that reses. That doesn't set them apart. And also theirs takes away like half their hit points, so if they do it at the wrong moment, they die. And then I would say the main thing they still have, and I forget the name of it, it's in the blood magic tree, it's the aura where no one near them will bleed out. That is still awesome, and it's still incredibly powerful, because if you just assume all the damage people would be taking near you from bleeding out and just pretend that that's HPS that you're countering, that's a stupid amount of healing per second. And you just being in their zip code gives them that. That is probably their most powerful anti-ally death skill at their disposal now, with this other stuff being taken away. So I do think this is cool. This is neat. It is interesting. It makes me think, and I like it. I am sad to see another feature of the save you from the brink of death Necromancer go away. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
And with the current state of Transfusion, we see it as like kind of an opportunity to take that slot and take it and make it more of like that supporty trait, but really tied into staff as a way to make staff that supportive weapon without changing like the core functionality of staff, because we know that, you know, staff on Necro hasn't gotten a ton of changes over the whole history of the game, just because it is like, it's a weapon that people really enjoy, and I feel like it is a pretty well-designed weapon that does a lot of things well for what it is trying to do. And we like that core functionality is, you know, a reason why it hasn't changed a ton, but this trait gives us an opportunity to kind of add more to it, because it is a Grandmaster trait. We can put some pretty strong stuff on here. And
you know what else is cool about this? Is there are some mobs in the game that won't trigger marks. The mobs that, I forget what the label is, but like that big ice guy in Strike Missions, where he's like half in the ground. The Freynier second phase, when he's like in the ground, he doesn't trigger marks. Like the structure type enemies. Yeah, the big old McDonald's eating ones. Like, they don't trigger marks. But if the mark is triggered by something else and it explodes, it will affect them. So if there's like, if Freynier's ads run over and hits the mark, it'll hit Freynier too. But if you've got marks that can be triggered by allies or enemies, that kind of solves that problem, you know? Like, if you're at the Octovine, I mean, this isn't needed at the Octovine, it's just an example. But if you're at the Octovine, you know, the Octovine thing is like a structure. Like, pets can't even attack it. They just, they look at the thing and they just do that. They don't help at all. But if you have marks that are set off by allies, you can use that to also hit the enemy that wasn't setting off marks in the first place. What was that noise? Nothing, that was you. That was on your end.
Really give the opportunity for staff to also be that support weapon.
Yep.
So what we're going to see here is that when you have Transfusion equipped, marks will also be triggered by allies. And the reason for that is that all of your mark triggers will now heal allies, and they're also going to have some additional bonuses to allies in the area. Obviously, still having all of their baseline functionality that's going to be inflicting conditions on enemies. So, you know, the optimal placement is going to be a location where your allies are standing on top of enemies, and you get that full value of the skill with the condies you have the support. But some pretty strong stuff here. Mark of Blood just getting bigger because it is like that lower cooldown. We also have the Lesser Mark of Blood from Mark of Evasion.
Relic of Mercy scaled with Transfusion? No. Relic of Mercy only... Okay, so Relic of Mercy is when you revive someone, they would get up with way more health. That only worked with the manual revive. So typically, like, in the olden days, a Necromancer would use Transfusion, it would pull a whole bunch of downstate people over to them, and they would just start hitting the F key repeatedly. And every time they kneeled down, it would basically snap someone up, and they would get a bunch of health. But if someone got up from the last tick of, like, Transfusion or Bloodwell, they did not get all the bonuses of the bonus health from being revived by the mercy thing.
But it does give some bigger access to Necro. Chillblaze is going to have a bigger heal. They're still going to have the baseline heal from the trait that all the marks are going to have, but it's also going to have a larger heal on top of that. Also going to grant some protection to allies in the area. Putrid Mark obviously has the Connie transform for yourself right now. It's now also going to cleanse allies, and it will do that in a intelligent order so that you will transfer conditions first, and then the cleanse will happen so that you make sure that you are getting that transfer value. And then Reaper's Mark, kind of the big one here, getting a pretty solid stability attached to it. I think we went with 3 stacks for 5 seconds initially, and we're going to see how that goes. But we want to make sure that, again...
Yeah, 3 stacks of stab for 5 seconds. That's pretty good. I'm not even messing around. That's pretty good. Like Glyph of Equality on Druid just gives 1 stack of stab, and that is more than enough for my needs most of the time. 3 stacks, that's juicy. That makes it a little bit more idiot proof. That means if you throw it out, it's time for stability, you do it, but then someone gets hit by something that they should have avoided in the first place. There's still 2 left for that mechanic that you needed it for. That's not bad. That's not bad.
And Grandmaster trait, kind of the big 5 skill, the big CC, also going to grant stab to your allies. Make sure it's a pretty good amount. And then, notably, you're going to get an extra Chillblades prop.
Now, the big thing here, let's pretend, let's chat. We're going to use our imaginations here, okay? All right, let's pretend that we are a Necro staff healer, all right? Now, the main thing is, if you are reliant on the staff for stability, you will need to start playing like every other healer in the game and, well, make sure that you're in the right weapon at the right time. Necromancer, historically, support Necros have had the largest freedom of weapons of any class in the game for support. You could run Scepter, you could run Dagger for just more power generation, you could run Staff, you could run Sword if you wanted to. Like, literally, you had so much freedom. The Torch offhand was usually wanted for some boons on one of your weapon sets, and it was kind of optional. You had a lot of freedom because none of the weapons were really required in the support build. If you're bringing this, you'll need to make sure that if you weapon swap out, that you don't need any of its features for 10 seconds before you can swap back. So, like, if you swap out of it and you need stability, oh no, I'm in the wrong weapon set and my weapon swap's on cooldown. So it'll be like, it's not the same, but it'll kind of be like when you're playing a Revenant, If you swap out of a legend and then you needed something that was in that legend, well, you can't go back for a little while. So you're either going to stay staff the whole time, or you're going to need to learn the parts of the fight where you need the staff so that when you have the freedom to swap back and forth.
Use Shroud skill 4. So keeping that same hook, we thought it was like pretty good cooldown across all the specs, where it is like an interesting way to trigger something. Don't want to do the heal pulses anymore, but you will get that burst of healing because Chillblains now heals and grants some additional protection. So you can get the Mark of Blood on dodge, you can get the extra Chillblains here, and then you have all the marks that are on the staff itself. A decent number of mark triggers, which are all going to...
For a second, I thought he said you can get Markiplier on dodge. I'm so sick right now.
Do that healing, all going to do some support stuff, and it could be pretty interesting, not only for support builds, but other builds that are maybe trading into blood. And now you have access to even some personal stability on Reaper's Mark, if that's what you're really looking for. And for now, we've also kind of identified Mark of Blood as a mark that should always trigger from allies because it has that regeneration component. It's pretty weird with Mark of Evasion when you dodge and you create a Mark of Blood that theoretically should give you regen, but it just doesn't trigger because there's no enemy on top of you. We are thinking about potentially that could just be baseline for the trait version only, the one that triggers when you dodge, and then Mark of Blood will keep the same behavior unless you have Transfusion. So obviously give us your feedback on that.
Wait, what?
Theoretical feedback for the previous...
Oh, so they're thinking of making Staff 2 also be triggered by allies just for the regen, even if you don't have the Transfusion trait. Honestly, I would take that. I'd be totally fine with that.
Post, and then also once you start playing with it in game, that's something that we can easily tune and change back. But keeping the ally triggering marks on Transfusion obviously makes a lot of sense when you could just be casting these on allies for healing, stability, vigor, and so on. Moving into Ranger next. What's going on?
Ranger. Some small updates for Ranger this patch.
Wait, what? Torch updates? What? Chat, I have played this game on and off since its launch. I don't think Torch has changed since then, ever. Hold on. I'm checking something. Let me see here. Let's see. Ranger. Throw torch. Oh, it was given a bit of splash damage 5 years ago. Yeah. All right, hold on. Bonfire. Oh, 2019. They added half a second to the duration. I mean, that was pretty recent, right? 2019? That was like a year ago. Yeah, all right, yo, I was wrong. My bad. It gets updates all the time. My mistake.
Torch getting a bit of changes to it, and then some small trade adjustments. Ranger is a class that's still looking on. I think after the preview, it'd be pretty reasonable to say it's just a bit of changes. I think Condi Soul Beast specifically is a build that is on my mind in both PvE and competitive.
All right. Throw Torch. 2 ammo. Now also inflicts blindness. I mean, yeah, if someone throws a torch in your face. I mean, I think this is acceptable. The skill now inflicts blindness in addition to its previous effects. Yeah, its previous effect was hot. Bonfire. The skill now releases an initial burst of fire when used. Total burning amount is unchanged. Alright, so they're front-loading it again. Okay, so again, they took some of the burning and they added it to the front, so if the enemy runs out of it and they only get hit by the first second or two, they get hit with more damage. Okay.
Modes in PvP, Condi Soul Beast looking maybe a bit too strong. Touch it down there, and then in PvE.
I didn't even know Ranger could use Torch. Well, okay, so the Torch is a Condi weapon, right? The 4 is a projectile that does burning, and the 5 puts a big patch of fire on the ground at your feet, which does burning per second. They're both just pure damage. There's no other utility. And they compete with other options. The offhand axe, the offhand warhorn, the offhand dagger. For condition damage, the dagger was quite good. The 5 is a projectile, and the 4 is both a long evade, and then it ends with a really big single target dot. So even for Condi, the dagger was often better than the torch. I say often, not always, but it was often better than the torch. But maybe it's got a place now. We'll see.
A bit, that's maybe too weak. Bump it up a bit there. So still thinking about that, but for now we have these changes as well. Throw Torch, it's getting a bit of defense added to it. So Torch was like a high DPS weapon, but it was kind of like all it did was burn people. So it's getting a bit more utility here. That's adding blindness and another ammo to Throw Torch to hopefully add some defensive use in the right time. And then Bonfire is getting the same change that we did to Firebomb and then Symbol of Resolution for the first take.
One thing that was kind of fun with Throw Torch back when I played Hybrid Soul Beast was if you got inside an enemy's hitbox and you threw down Torch 5, the field, and then you weapon swapped to Axe, you weapon swapped to another set, and then you did Axe 5, which was like, 20 whirl combos, and then it would combo with the field, and it would just put like 30 stacks of burning on the guy. I mean, it was very much a PvE gimmick, but yeah, Torch 5 into Axe 5 was just a blender of fire. It was very fun. But it was very, very, very niche uses, but fun when it worked.
Is going to be a lot more burning, and then the other takes will be less impactful. Yep, and then 2 skirmishing Grandmaster traits. The first one is Quick Draw is becoming quicker. It's now going to grant quickness in addition to its previous effects, so it's going to become kind of like Brutality on Revenant, which we see is a popular.
Oh, wow. Quick Draw holds a special place in my heart. I haven't played a build with Quick Draw in a long time, but some of you may remember the Arrow Cart build that I made. This is one of the only builds that was a Muck original that has stuck around for a long time, so it has a special place in my heart. But Quick Draw is after you weapon swap, the next button you hit that's a 1 through 5 has a very short cooldown. So if you swap to a longbow and use the 5, instead of having a 25-second cooldown, it has a 9-second cooldown or something like that. So if you just use 2 longbows and you hit weapon swap before you hit 5, you can do it every 10 seconds. So you can barrage, and barrage lasts like 5 or 6 seconds, so it's more than 50% uptime on barrage. So great in World v. World, where you can sit back behind a wall and just let it rain on the enemy nonstop. Now it will also give a bit of quickness, so I guess that barrage will cast a little bit faster. Which is nice, because barrage is one of those few skills in the game I mentioned earlier where it makes you hold still while you're doing it.
Great sometimes. It's still going to give you that CDR, but now it's going to give you some quickness. So in modes where you don't always have quickness, it'll feel even better to get that, swap, use that one skill, and then continue on. And then Light on your feet is being changed. Right now, it only additionally procs on Quick Shot. It's now being changed to proc on any Ranger skill that evades. So, your Lightning Reflexes, your Stalker Strike, it's all going to give you the buff. And then the buff duration itself is going from 4 to 6 seconds. So
okay, so short bow, I think 3 is an evade. You kick yourself backwards a few feet, and it's an evade, so you can kind of use it like another dodge roll, and it does like a little shot at the enemy while you're jumping backward. Light on your feet, what it did was you got a buff increasing damage and Condi duration after you successfully dodge an attack with that shortbow 3 skill, specifically that shortbow 3 skill. And then it also gave a passive buff to shortbow piercing. So if you used a shortbow skill, it could pierce through one enemy and hit enemies behind it. So a little bit of AoE. And recharge reduction. And also, a lot of people got this one wrong. All shortbow skills, if you were hitting an enemy from the side or back, were improved. Even the auto attack did more dot damage. So this is now going to proc that active part, even when you just are dodge rolling. And the buff duration lasts longer, which could potentially, once we see the numbers, be useful in any game mode.
The goal is to get a lot more uptime on this trait so that its damage bonuses can shine a bit more.
I think you had a fun anecdote about trait icons.
Oh, yeah. These trait icons are really good. Light on your feet is just a light bulb on a foot. I think the artist who drew that thought they were like so smart. And then quick draw is like a pistol. Like...
They were.
Yeah, and then quick draw is a gun, which rangers can't use. I also shouldn't point out that Ancient Seeds was reworked into a completely different trait, but it still looks like a seed.
And then Vicious Quarry. Vicious Quarry, for those who don't know, its trait name used to be Most Dangerous Game, and that's why it's the Guild Wars 2 icon. Again, whoever made these icons was a genius.
You know,
but you ruined it because you keep changing the names of things.
Favorite part about adding them to this PowerPoint.
It is a dangerous game. Some days maybe 12 years ago, you were playing Guild Wars 2, and then one day you woke up and you were streaming live, describing changes to the next balance update live to your players. And that is, an interesting thing. And, all the technical difficulties that come along with that.
Yeah.
We still got some Ranger stuff to talk about.
Yep, these are again smaller
more
changes for the elite specializations. Unstoppable Union was a trait that was hard to get value out of. It gave you protection and vigor plus cleanse things when you went into beast mode. But kind of playing around that trigger when you're already in beast mode a lot, it's kind of hard because then you got to go out and wait for it. So that's going to give you just protection when entering and leaving it, and hopefully be a more reliable trigger you can get value out of. And then going on to Untamed, 2 changes. Cleansing Unleash is a trait that used to make a lot of sense back when Unleashing had a cooldown, but then the cooldown was removed, which it feels good without a cooldown. But then this trait is kind of random.
Okay, hold on. Unstoppable Union, gain protection when entering or leaving beast mode. Okay, it used to remove... God dang. Dude, they're giving this trait the Necromancer treatment. So, in the past, it was a stun break. Then, they took the stun break away, and it removed Chill, Cripple, and Immobilize, and it gave you Vigor and Prot. Now it just gives Prot. So, Unstoppable Union is basically a Necromancer now. Untamed, Cleansing Unleash. This trait now displays on the buff bar if it is not on cooldown. I have mixed feelings on that. So what this does is when you or your pet unleash, it will cure 2 conditions. Now, the issue is our buff bar is extremely cluttered. However, this is a step in the right direction. Because there are some things, like Streamlined Kits for Engineer, shows on the buff bar when it's ready to go. But then there's other skills that don't. And there's no way to tell if they're ready or not. So, I'll happily take this, but I do not think this is a good permanent solution. I think there needs to be some other way of seeing that this stuff is available besides throwing one more icon in that ocean of icons down there on the bar. Let's see. Restorative Strikes. Restorative Strikes was when you were your pet unleash, you would gain some protection, and you would get life stealing for like 4 or 5 seconds. Now it's been reworked and renamed Biorhythm? When you or your pet unleash every interval for a duration, gain a stack of Biorhythm, granting a percentage of strike damage as healing. When you reach the Biorhythm stack threshold, the next time you or your pet unleash, gain both bonuses from Vow of the Untamed. What?
I'm tracking the timer, and so now the timer will be on the buff bar, kind of like Clarion Bond is. So you don't have to we want to cleanse, and you're just like spamming unleash, and you don't know when it's going to proc. So now you will know if you have it or not, and hopefully that will be feeling better. And then Restorative Strikes is a trait that's been reworked a ton of times, and then we're reworking it again. So when there's a lot of words, that's kind of hard to understand, but hopefully in game it'll make a lot more sense. When you and your pet unleash for every interval for a duration, this means like every second for 5 seconds, you get a stack of Biorhythm, which is going to grant a percentage of your strike.
1 sec. Am I still logged in? No. Hang on. Hang on. We're checking something. Can we make VTuber Muck permanent? If I stay sick. Actually, I shouldn't say that, because then you guys will, like, come to my house and do weird stuff to my water or something. Hang on. Alright, I'm gonna change to Untamed. Okay. So... Alright, so Restorative Strikes is getting changed to Biorhythm. So, that means that this will give you stacks of a buff that heals you. And when it gets maxed out, you get both of these buffs. So Valve the Untamed will give you either 25% less damage taken or 25% more damage outgoing. So if you get this thing to maximum, the Biorhythm, you get to keep both of these. So the question is, can you get this to 100% uptime in PvE on a target dummy? Because this trait right here gives 25% damage. This trait right here gives 5% damage increase, also 5% movement speed increase, and it stacks 5 times. So if this is going to be 25% damage output, then this needs to be able to be achievable 100% uptime on the Valve the Untamed bonus. Because then it would be 25% DPS and move speed versus 25% DPS and also 25% less damage taken. Then we have a conversation. But if this does not have full uptime in PvE, no one will ever take this over quickness or damage. No one will ever take this. PvP, I'm not sure. It depends on the healing that you get. Like, if you get stupid healing, then maybe. It could be useful in a duel or something.
Strike damage as healing. That's kind of what the trait already does. And then when you reach the Biorhythm stack threshold, so it's like if you reach 5 stacks, the next time you and your pet unleash, you'll gain both bonuses from Valve the Untamed. So this is kind of a trait that wants to encourage staying in both unleashed and leashed states for equal amounts of time, staying in there for at least 5 seconds, because a lot of the gameplay around Untamed now is like you're unleashed, you swap in, press F1 through F3, and then swap back to get an ambush. So trying a trait that incentivizes you to stay in both forms to keep the bonuses from Valve the Untamed. Maybe it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Sounds pretty interesting.
Yep.
We can move on to the Revenant next. So we got some updates to Malix, Legendary Demon Stance, adding some of those Dark Aura traits to the Corruption trait line here that we talked about a little bit earlier, and a little bit of a nice adjustment, I guess a couple adjustments for Support Vindicator in PvE. Will it be a real build after this patch? Well, stay tuned. So, kicking things
Spoiler
off with
alert,
changes
no.
to Demon Stance.
I'm just kidding, I have no idea
This is
what I'm
going to
talking
give you an extra Dark Aura, and it's also going to give you some Might per condition on you. This is an instance of, Revenant healing skills. You have to be a little bit careful with them, just because Revenant has access to 2 pretty easily. So we didn't want to bump up the healing amount too much here, but we figured that with the extra Dark Aura stuff that's being added to Corruption, which we'll get to in a minute, the extra Dark Aura will feel pretty good on the heal, and then also just some extra Might stacks. You can have a lot of unique conditions on you, so you can get a lot of Might from the skill potentially. And then the other thing that we're trying to do for Demon Stance is give it a bit more reliable DPS, a little more reliable pressure, where right now a lot of the damage is baked into the elite skill, and it's kind of that pulsing AoE. You always get like the extra value every time you use a skill that costs energy, but it's not like the most interesting or the most like immediate value. It's like harder to interact with. There's not a key moment that you need to dodge to really avoid a lot of the damage.
I think, okay, so this kind of shines a spotlight on Revenant as a whole. So what he's talking about right now is a valid concern. And I am not saying that dude, I swear, I could say anything here and I'm going to get clipped afterward. I could be like, I'm not saying that Chicago sucks. And then someone's just going to clip, and Mukluk said Chicago sucks. Anyway. Anyway. Revenant. All right? If you're in a legend, all the buttons cost power. So what do players do? They just figure out which button does the most damage per power. And then they spam that button. The exception is utility. So if you've got 3 buttons that do damage and they cost power, revs are pretty much just going to spam the best one and ignore the others like they don't exist until the end of time. And if they want that to be different, they are going to have to fundamentally change that system. Because they all use the same resource. For other classes, their buttons, the resource is the recharge time, plus, the action of pressing the key. So, like, if you're a Guardian and your Scepter 1 and your Scepter 2 are both up, you know that Scepter 2 is more damage, so you prioritize that one, But the energy system It's called energy, not power. It doesn't matter. Oh my god. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The metaphor still worked. You're dumb. Anyway. I forgot what I was saying. That guy in chat, it's like I just walked into a League of Legends player. Oh my god. The aura hit me. Deranged streamer. There's no filter today. Anyway, yeah. If you've got multiple buttons that cost energy and they all do damage, people are just going to find the best one and spam that one, and that's the end of it, till the end of time.
So we are looking for ways to kind of add a bit more pressure into the kit. Starting with Banish Enchantment, this skill is just going to do some baseline Torment. Obviously, you have some Torment already when you're traded, so you're Chill Inflicts Torment, but now you're also just always going to have Torment. You probably have to trade anyway, so you get even more Torment, but it is just going to be that more...
If you took a shot every time that he says Torment, that was a busy 10 seconds.
Consistent, reliable, a little bit of extra pressure. The Boon Rip is good, but there's some cases where it doesn't necessarily feel like it's worth pressing. We'd rather spend your energy on other things. Now it's a skill that, you're still going to generally use it for that Boon Rip case, but you can also use it for a little bit of range pressure if you feel the need to. And the big change here is that Call to Anguish is getting a follow-up skill. So you're going to leap in, Call to Anguish, and then it's going to flip over to Unyielding Impact. And this is basically the skill that we want to put a bunch of the damage for Demon Stance on. And it's basically like Worldly Impact. It's going to have that same animation where you kind of leap up into the air, in place, slam back down. It's going to do a big explosion of, dark demon energy, and it's going to inflict some burning, torment, and poison.
PG stream. Crimson. 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 Friendship is magic.
Just get like all those good damaging conditions, and again, be that big moment of pretty big damage available to the Demon Stance.
Yep.
Moving into, here's the corruption traits that we were talking about. Replenishing Despair, kind of the big one here. It's that adept trait that previously gave like reduces or gives you some energy back on your upkeep skills at the cost of like some torment. Kind of a weird trait. Didn't have a whole lot of applications. So as we were looking at kind of getting some of that Dark Aura stuff here, it made a lot of sense to make this kind of the payoff, because we were going to add, we see below Permeating Pestilence getting an extra Dark Aura on top of its other effects, but the big payoff for Dark Aura is Replenishing Despair, where every time you grant yourself a Dark Aura, it is going to do a bit of life stealing around you. So as with all the other things,
They're really pushing Dark Auras this patch. I guess they just realized, like, hey, we have an aura that, like, no one uses. Let's add this everywhere. I don't hate it. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. It's just funny.
Additional hits of this AoE attack are going to do lesser healing, but it's still going to be a pretty decent lifesteal in terms of damage and the base heal, so that, all these new Dark Auras, you can still get Dark Auras now from Blast Finishers, you can obviously still leap through Dark Fields, get a decent amount of Dark Auras, and just have a little bit of extra pressure, a little bit of extra sustain with Replenishing Despair, which could be pretty fun for like some of the Demon Stance builds now. Next up, looking at some Devastation updates. Aggressive Agility. This is now Aggressive Arrival. So what's going on here, Taylor?
Yep, so it's being changed. So before it would give you resistance on movement ability, and now it grants resistance on swapping legends. We're changing the trigger so it's more intentional, so both you and your opponent can play around it a bit better. Gaining resistance from swapping legends, I want to burst here, you're going to get plus 50 energy from swapping, so it'll be a moment that you're about to use some skills. And also for your enemy, you can see that they just swapped, wait it out, and then if you want to do something like fear them or apply some weakness, that's your moment too. When it was on movement ability, it was just a bit too frequent of a trigger, and happened when you just were going to use movement abilities anyways. So hopefully this feels better to play with and better to play around. And then Brutality is going to be a trait that before it was specifically a trait that was made to hate on stability, and the way it did it was a bit unhealthy. It specifically targeted stability and removed some buffs, and removed the buff, and that was like frustrating to play around. And had some times where like supports would take Devastation just to take Brutality and jump on people and take away their stability. It's not what we want to see out of the trait. So instead, we're changing it so that you're going to deal increased strike damage to people to have protection and stability. It's still going to have that like bunker busting identity, but be different, enhanced in the way if you want DPS builds to take this, and so know that you're going to be dealing increased damage, and protection basically has less effectiveness against you when people have stability. You're going to be hitting them harder as well, and it's still going to have that quickness on swap. We felt that was an interesting part of the trait, so it's going to give you the quickness and damage bonus. Hopefully, be a bit more interesting.
For sure. All right, moving on to Renegade. So a quick note here for like support heal-based Renegade builds. What do you think, Taylor? Not quite up to par?
Yeah, I think this is a trait that's like signaling something we want to do in the future. Right now, this is the change we have for Renegade support. We know that's probably not enough to bring it into a real build, but it's like something you want to do now because it's also doubling as reducing the incoming condition damage reduction on Righteous Rebel that we've seen when stacked with Resolution in competitive mode can be just a really high number and not something we're happy with. So changing the identity of this trait to be a full support trait, and then in future updates probably increase the support capabilities of Kala and Renegade so we can see it flourish that way instead of just being kind of a tanky trait.
And here we go.
Wait. So Righteous Rebel used to reduce the damage you receive from conditions, and it made orders from above last longer and affect a larger area. Orders from above was the thing that gave everyone Alacrity. If they... if they take away the plus 50% duration increase to Alacrity trait, are Alacrigades okay? I think it still does that. They're keeping that? Okay. All right. I thought they were saying they were taking that out.
And then if you drop, they probably
Unpause it? No. We're going to pause in the middle of the sentence, and we're going to complain about stuff for 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to unpause and find out that none of that was necessary. Okay? This is a live stream. It's how we do things.
increase the support capabilities of Kala and Renegade, so we can see it flourish that way instead of just being kind of a tanky trait.
Then here we go, the big updates to Vindicator. Starting things off the Redemptor Servant while everyone reads the bottom note. But Rework again, this is kind of one of the few remaining traits that is a trigger that when you go below a health threshold and get struck, you do something. These are things that, we reworked a lot of them in the past because we don't really like this gameplay. And so anytime we can make these triggers a bit more controlled, we really want to do that. So here we have it on a healing skill trigger. It's obviously still going to have a cooldown, especially because of things like Ventari or just Revenant's nature of having 2 heal skills. The cooldown will be pretty different between PvE and competitive modes, just so that it is something that you can maybe get easier access to, that kind of double tap between legends in PvE, but not so much in...
What is that? Minimuck needs glowing red eyes? Well, when I'm hiding behind him? Just give him some, like, angry eyebrows.
Competitive modes, because we do want it to be kind of a impactful heal and obviously also grant protection to your allies instead of the condition removal. And then big change here, Sage Azu Heltzer. In addition to its other effects, now going to grant Alacrity to allies affected by your dodge. And this is actually pretty important. Healing builds in PvE, Vindicator has a lot of tools that a lot of healing builds have access to, and it has a lot of potential to be a real powerful healing build, but it does not have access to Alacrity, and in PvE that is kind of a thing that will make you never play it, because obviously all of its competitors have access to Alacrity, and why would you play a heal build that doesn't give Alacrity when you can play a heal build that does give Alacrity? So, Vindicator now grants Alacrity, so we'll see what happens.
I might say.
It is potentially...
Huh. Okay. So, what about Spellbreaker? Soul Beast. Dragon Hunter. So this is going to be the first class where all 3 elite specializations give essential boons. I'm not opposed to Vindicator having the tools needed to be a upper tier PvE healer. I'm not opposed to that. I'm not against that. I would just like to see, if they're going to open that door, I would like to see them do that with others more.
quite strong.
They watch all the competitive modes, having fun, playing their blue stance, dodging on their allies, looking out from the window, being like, man, I wish that could be me. And now it can. They're allowed to be healers in the PvE game mode.
Which, that's just great. Looking forward to it.
Don't say Spellbreaker, I feel really bad. Well, oh god, my sniffles. The reason I said Spellbreaker is, it doesn't really make sense for a berserker, a guy who just rips his shirt off and goes, nah! Wait, hold on. Let me hit the button. One sec. Okay. Ah! It doesn't really make sense for a berserker who's just, screaming and tearing his shirt off and, raging and hitting people with an axe to be healing people. But he does. And the Blade Sworn is I got the power of God and anime on my side, and everyone around him gets healed. So, why not the Spellbreaker? And I personally just say Spellbreaker because I myself, if I have to play Warrior, I have the most fun on Spellbreaker. And I'm sad to see it doesn't have those essential boons. So it can't be a support for that. Oh, that's the only reason. That's literally the only reason. It's not like Berserker has some massive support thing other than quickness. It's same with that. So, why not that? A Soul Beast can use a Druid Staff and do a lot of healing. It can merge with the Jacaranda and get some heal skills from that, but it just doesn't... It can't keep up with Druid, and it also doesn't do Alacrity or Quickness, so it's never going to be real. But then you got the Vindicator thing. I'm totally okay with this. I would just like to see them revisit some of the others they missed. I saw some people say, how about Harbinger? I mean, Harbinger's thing is they drink so much drugs that they were reducing their own health. I don't think I want that as my doctor. If that was my doctor, I would want a second opinion. So I'm vetoing that one. But there's definitely some others that it's like, maybe we could do a little more support with this guy.
We'll see if it's overpowered or not, and maybe coming down in the future. But hopefully it's just in the right spot. Yeah, that's a good one in on for Revenant. So let's move into Thief.
Thief. 4 whole bullet points.
4 bullet points.
Yep. So there's going to be some small changes to a lot of things. I think the Dark Aura hooks are going to be a bit more involved than Revsaw and Shadow Arts, and then Spectre getting a pretty big rework that we'll get to. But before we can move on and then just talk about first bullet point, which is the Deadly Arts in Daredevil. It's kind of like.
But the potions, it's the potion, dude. Those are just like, it's just like vodka with like hallucinogenic mushrooms thrown in. They drink it, they reduce their max health, and then they're just like, let's mucking go! And I don't know why they talk like Mario. Apparently they do that. But then they hit harder for some reason. They're just stoned out of their minds. Like, I don't know that they're making everybody around them healthier.
We're buffing Deadly Arts and buffing Daredevil, kind of, so that's like one build that would appreciate both of them. So Deadly Arts we're buffing. You see Mug's getting a healing increase, and then even the odds, reveal training, explosive weakness, all getting stronger.
What? Oh, Mug. I thought he said Mug. I was like, wait. I thought he said Mug's getting a healing increase. I was looking at my other screen. My head whipped around so fast. I was like, what? Wait, hold on. We're buffing and nerfing me? Mug. Ah, Muglug, he's back. I can't get away from him. If you know the lore, you know. Increase healing from 19. See, look, what a weird sentence. Imagine being someone new to Guild Wars 2 when you're seeing this patch note. Mug is getting a healing increase. Like, what? Mug. Yeah, to who? The guy you stole from? Like, or you yourself?
Deadly Arts is kind of like a middle ground trait line. If you want full damage, you take crit strikes. If you want full defense, take Shadow Arts. But sometimes you might want a bit of both. So that's kind of like what we think Deadly Arts should be for those Power Thief builds that want to take it. But it just wasn't middle grounding enough. So increasing the sustain a bit, increasing the damage, hopefully make it feel a bit better. Last patch we buffed Improv a bit, which is another huge reason to take Deadly Arts, get that utility skill reduction. Executioner is still a good trait, 20% is a big number. So hopefully Deadly Arts is a bit more appealing. And then we move on to the Daredevil changes. Distracting Daggers is getting a change that's similar to what we did with Power Block. The skill, unlike Power Block, wasn't really popular because taking a utility skill for it was pretty high trade-off. But we're still changing it, so it's no longer going to increase the cooldown. And this time, when you interrupt it, you're going to get a damage increase, and you're also going to refund some initiative. So, again, use it, get that interrupt, know that you have some initiative back and a damage increase, so you can continue on to burst a bit. And then moving on, we are buffing both Escapist Fortitude and Brawler's Tenacity, a bit more defensive. Marauder's Resilience, dominating the tier, so buffing up the other add-up traits to be a bit interesting. We'll see. Impact and Disruption, another interrupt trait that's getting additional effect. Before we just do increased damage, we're really happy, or inflict a debuff that would do some damage, so we weren't really happy about that. So now we're increasing additional functionality. It'll still put a pulmonary impact, but it'll also reduce the cooldown of your steal. So it could be interesting. Get like a couple seconds of steal recharge on interrupt could make that trait more interesting than Havoc for some builds. And then Unhindered Combatant is getting tweaked a little bit. The exhaust removing Cripple is being removed. Cripple is kind of a really calming condition, and removing it isn't that strong of an effect, and we felt like you should be punished for it, so that's getting removed. And then the exhaust when removing Chill is getting toned down from 3 to 2 seconds.
Still exhausting when you cleanse and mobilize, because that is incredibly powerful.
Yep.
But you'll be slightly more unhindered with your unhindered combat.
Yep, and these are the changes specifically tweaked at Condition Daredevil in PvE. Death Blossom is getting its bleeding condensed. It'll be the same damage still, but it used to be 15 seconds, which was 30 seconds with 100% condition duration, which is a really long time. So now it's just going to be 7.5 seconds. So hopefully it takes a lot less for you to ramp up. Dagger Storm getting its bleeding increase in both stacks and duration to maybe be potentially an interesting take for an elite skill outside of your Thieves Guild. And then Impaling Lotus is getting a change similar to what we did for Guardian Greatsword 5, where the projectiles can only hit the original target. And because of that, we're compensating a bit. We're increasing the damage from the dodge to be about 2 times what it was. And then you can see also the bleeding is getting condensed a little bit as well, going from 15 seconds to 10 seconds.
All right, moving into Shadow Arts.
Yep, these are going to be the Dark Aura hooks for Shadow Arts. It's basically the whole top row of the trait line is becoming reworked to work with Dark Aura. We felt like it was interesting thematic for Thief to work with Dark Aura, and also when you support allies, you don't necessarily always want to stealth them. Stealthing people can have unintended consequences, and so we wanted to give this trait line an option to support allies without stealthing them.
Oh, thank God. Okay. All right. So last year, when I did the thing where I tried every single healer support in Guild Wars 2, which was quite a journey. At the time, Spectre was the one I hated the most. And there was a couple of reasons, and a few of them have been fixed in the last year, but one of them was the stealthing. They would routinely stealth teammates while doing their rotation. And for those that don't know, if you're like doing attacks and your character's like you've hit all your buttons and for the next couple seconds you're going 1 1 1 1 1 and a thief stealths you, your attack chain just stops. So a thief support would actively lower the damage of their party because every time they stealthed you, it interrupted your attack chains. Times 4, assuming there's 4 of the DPS besides you. So it was really stupid. Like, the Untamed blinding everyone with green snot was up there on my list of this is dumb. That was at the top of the list.
So the traits are being reworked to work with Dark Aura. The first one is just it's still going to give Barrier on heal, but it's also going to give Dark Aura to be an extra trigger. Shadow Savior is being reworked. This used to be heal on Shadow Step. It's now gain Dark Aura when you steal, and then giving Dark Aura to yourself is how it's worded. So you can't, like, multiply, like, 5 thieves that are all giving Dark Aura and, like, blow straight out. It's when you give Dark Aura to yourself, heal nearby allies. And then the last trait, Cover of Shadow, is when you steal, create a field around yourself that grants protection to nearby allies. This field is going to be a dark field. So this is going to be the protection granting that the trait used to have. And then when you give Dark Aura to yourself, remove a condition from nearby allies. So it's getting more healing, more condition removal to support thief builds. Could even be used selfishly. The heal per prod is what you want out of this. The Dark Aura does baseline give you condition damage reduction. So potentially, even if you're not a support build, these traits could be interesting. But just new ways to play around with the Shadow Arts traits.
How many times are you going to Heartseeker through your Dark Field cover?
You can probably do it like 3 times in a row, which is 3x procs. And then, Heartseeker spamming is just the best way to use Dagger. So
it's just the best way to play Thief in general, I think.
Yep.
Singing of Shadows. This also now grants Dark Aura.
No. It's PP Unload.
Yep, for fun.
Just for fun. Well, it's a skill that's not super impactful. We've kind of played around with the things that it does and making the cooldown a lot lower. But now it's going to have, like...
I'm sorry, did he just say they added Dark Aura to Signet of Shadows for fun? Like, he just came in there and he's like, we're just going to season this. Did that thing where he dropped salt down his arm along his elbow. Just add some Dark Aura.
That Dark Aura to play into all of the other Dark Aura triggers. So maybe a bit more appealing to Shadow Arts builds.
All right, and this is another big one. Spectre is no longer going to have reduced initiative. This is something we thought about for a while, and kind of like something we said for other things this patch is we want Spectre to feel the best it can, and then if it's too strong, we'll bounce in other ways. Black Powder, or you see that they're getting +3 initiative, and then some of their key skills. Right now, they're written that they'll apply to all game modes. Something we might make just competitive, especially for things like measured shots. But basically, you're going to get +3 initiative, and then we are happy with where Spectre is at in game modes currently, so we don't want it to blow out too much. So that's kind of what these notes are for, is that we know we want Spectre and its power level weapons to be the same on it as it is for, like, Deadeye and Daredevil. So they'll no longer get that reduction. It'll be 12 baseline, 15 with preparedness, and yeah.
Yeah, we'll always be keeping a pretty close eye on this one. Everyone's favorite phrase, keeping a close eye on it. But this, like Taylor said, this is the change that we want. We want to make it feel like Spectre will just play a lot better with the baseline initiative that everyone else has. So we'll balance as needed around that, but we'll see how things go. And then Shade Step.
Shade Step. It is getting kind of a functionality rework. Before, it would just grant a boon to your nearby allies when you used any Spectre skill or Shroud skill, and we're changing it so now that each skill is going to give a different thing to allies, so we can make room to put more things in the support kit for specifically support Spectres. It's going to have the same logic as like the boon application now. It's going to apply to you, your tether, and the 3 nearest allies. But like I said, what the skill does is different. Pawn Shot is going to be a small heal to nearby allies, so even if you don't hit anybody, there's going to be kind of like a little sustained heal to keep people up as you're waiting for things to come out in Shroud. Grasping Shadows is where the Alacrity in PvE is going to come from. It's going to apply regeneration in other game modes. So use Grasping Shadows off cooldown when you're in Shroud as you do other things. Should upkeep the Alacrity and not have to like spam all your skills just to do that. Dawn's Repose is going to get protection to nearby allies. Eternal Light is going to be a large heal to nearby allies. So this is going to be like a chunky heal. You need a burst heal. You're going to press forward. Even if you don't hit an enemy, you're still going to heal a good amount with this. And then Mind Shock is going to grant Aegis to nearby allies, which was notably missing boon in its support kit in PvE.
All right. Moving on to Warrior. Got some updates to Axe, Mace, and Bladesworn. Probably some other things sprinkled in there as well. Those are the highlights. Let's hop into it. Starting off with Eviscerate. Increased range. So this is a skill, everyone who's played with Eviscerate knows. It's the short range, and it just feels. Sometimes it feels like it's bugged. It feels like your opponent can just walk away from you, and then your Eviscerate just like stops just short, and you don't get to hit them. And there's room for some of that in the game, but that's still going to be the case. If you space your Eviscerate incorrectly at 4.
I just realized I could just like go AFK and come back after the Warrior section and be like, yeah, that's cool. Like, dude, VTubers have it made. Oh my god. Dude, I'm realizing the power of this setup. Oh my gosh. Just do like the Asmongold, be like, whoa, that's crazy.
Range, you're still going to run into that. It just gives you a bit more flexibility.
Y'all wouldn't even know.
A little bit more opportunity for Eviscerate to land more reliably, and really make the iconic skill of Axe just feel a bit better. We also see increased critical strike chance. This is going to be a bit more notable for competitive modes as you're not generally crit capping, but Berserker Amulet with Fury or Marauder's Amulet, as long as you're over 50% crit chance in some way, now your Eviscerate's always going to crit, so it's always going to be that big moment. It feels feels right that your Eviscerate is going to be like your big damaging component, and Thorax is getting some damage reduction because of currently it's kind of inverted. Eviscerate is still good, but Thorax is like the big damage moment, which feels a little off, doesn't feel right, and it's probably a little overpowered even. So shifting more power into Eviscerate, taking some away from Thorax, and notably we're bumping up the level 1 power of the Eviscerate to make it play a bit better with Spellbreaker, who's only going to have access to those level 1 bursts. And the top end is getting up there too, so 2.2 power coefficient. Let's see some core warriors get some big Eviscerates, but notably we'll see this with Mace 2 as well, where we do want these weapons to feel a bit better for.
This is all just high DPS talk that I'm too support to understand, so I'm just nodding.
Spellbreaker, we don't want them to be limited to only a smaller selection of the weapons that maybe aren't as important to have the higher level bursts. We want all the weapons to feel pretty reasonable for Spellbreaker, so that's a nod to that.
I think for Eviscerate, the range change, if people wanted like a current example of what it will be like, Pounce and it's escaping me, Hollow Sword 3 are basically the same animation, have the same aftercast range and all that, and those skills feel pretty smooth, so hopefully Eviscerate will feel just as smooth as those.
Cyclone Axe getting a little bit extra Fury. This is just another case of, obviously, Fury is super valuable to Warrior. One of the things that Axe does well is being that reliable Fury source, but Cyclone Axe on like the lower cooldown compared to some other things that give you Fury. It just doesn't quite give you enough. It does hit twice, so you're getting 2 seconds here, but now you're going to get 3 seconds here if you're hitting both of your...
Virtue of Sin, why did you redeem put on the wizard hat? You know what? Sure, yeah, I'm wearing the wizard hat now. Alright, I'm checking this off. I'm taking your points, and I'm saying that I did this. And as far as you're concerned, all I'm wearing right now is wizard hats. Anywhere and everywhere. It's just oops all hats. That's it. You're welcome.
Cyclone Axes. Just a little bit more opportunity to set up your other skills with Fury. Maybe you don't need it as much with the Eviscerate, but it will put you over that 50% threshold with the Berserker Amulet, so you will always go with the Eviscerate. Pretty good stuff. And as we talked about already, Throw Axe, the damage bonus is just going down a little bit. It's still going to be pretty powerful, but I've seen maybe high 8k Throw Axes. Taylor, I don't know what your record Throw Axe is.
It was a lot, and it's a really low cast time, hard to see coming sometimes, so it definitely was not where we want the power budget of the weapon to be.
That's a bit overtuned, so coming down. As mentioned, Skullcrack getting that same kind of increase in the level 1, as well as just a little bit of higher scaling as well. Make the skill a bit more powerful. Mace, main hand. The big change here is Counterblow. You want to talk about Counterblow?
Yeah, Counterblow is getting changed, so basically you can reactivate while you're blocking to just do the strike that would have happened if someone hit you. We want to add a bit more agency to main hand Mace. A lot of time you like Skullcrack someone, it's just how the weapon it is. You don't have like that bread and butter 2 skill to follow up with. So now you're going to be able to Skullcrack someone and then reactivate Counterblow to just hit them immediately. The hit will be just a lesser version in that like currently the normal Counterblow applies like a ton of vulnerabilities. It will buy a lesser amount, but it'll be the same damage. Also changing it so that instead of granting you Adrenaline if you don't get hit, you gain Adrenaline if you strike someone, so either with that reactivation or from the block hit. So trying to add a bit more agency into Mace itself to follow up on the CCs you're throwing out.
Yep. We still wanted to maintain like all the things that Mace does well. Obviously having the CC on Skullcrack, skill on skill 3, having that block on Counterblow is like extremely valuable, but there was still the absence of like a decently reliable damage source. Kind of similar to like what we were talking about with Demon Stance, where just adding...
Could I get the link for the YouTube video? Yeah. Well, hang on a second. Shoot. Alright, if you go, it's twitch.tv/Guild Wars 2, and it's their most recent broadcast if you just scroll down the page.
The flip skill here, or making this flip skill relevant in this case, just gives you access to that more reliable damage when you need it. Moving on, 100 Blades, getting some damage increase. Still can't move though, but this is kind of a nod to, well, what is it, Taylor? Some of the two-handed weapons.
I can't wait for the Captain Crapface video where he analyzes all of the warrior changes and tells us mathematically why all of these were the worst decisions they could have possibly made. It seems like no matter what change they make to Warrior, he shows up and he's got some incredible logic for how that was the dumbest decision you've ever heard.
Weapons are a little bit behind right now.
Right, in PvE, Spear is really strong, and then with new dual wielding, one-handed weapons are super strong as well, and Greatsword and Hammer kind of felt left in the dust, so these are changes to make them feel up to par. 100 Blades is supposed to be a skill with identity of a lot of damage for the cost of standing still, and we want to keep that identity, so if it's not doing enough damage, we're increasing the damage. So hopefully a lot more damage coming out from 100 Blades, and Hammer is getting buffed through its traits, Merciless Hammer and Stalwart Strength, both doing 5% more for about a 10% increase. And then a small change at the bottom, Body Blow is now going to afflict invulnerability instead of bleeding. Felt like this trait, doing bleeding in the strength trait line was a bit awkward. The vulnerability...
Hold on, I don't know him. I'll happily plug him. Hang on a second. No, not Captain America. Captain Crapface YouTube. Where is he? Yeah, this is him. Let me see. Guild Wars Schizophrenia is the newest video. Oh my god. Why these Berserker buffs don't help. Let me see.
Hey, my glorious, generous arena nerd overlords. You remember the time where you made few insignificant numeric adjustments to rifle and got verbally vomited upon with a slew of suggestions of better improvement ideas, And so you made meaningful improvements, and everyone lived happily for once, and there was party and a cake. Well, I hope we're entering the same cycle with those changes. First of all, let us have a look at them and discuss what's the underlying.
Anyway, he's actually quite calm right now. He gets pretty heated, but he's great. I've talked to him a few times. He's a funny guy. He knows way more about Warrior than I do.
The weakness it currently does is really good. So now we're increasing vulnerability. So if you stun someone, just a bit more damage to follow up on that.
Actually, pretty powerful stuff. And then Berserker. Got a couple of nice little changes here. Pretty much a quality of life adjustment to Heat the Soul, right?
Yep, Heat the Soul. It would kind of razor edge your quickness, and if you weren't pressing your skills immediately off cooldown, or there was some reason for downtime, you drop quickness really fast. So increasing the quick duration here in PvE to make Quick Berserker feel a lot more reliable and good, and not like you have to be constantly performing at your best just to do your basic job of applying quickness.
Yep.
And then
yeah,
Dead or Alive.
Okay. Yeah, Dead or Alive. I mean, it's pretty straightforward here. It's obviously still going to give you that Blood Reckoning trigger, so you'll convert your damage to healing, but it's also going to give you a consistent flat heal when you enter or potentially exit Berserk mode if you have Eternal Champion. So just a bit more reliable sustain for, could be power or anti-Berserker if you feel the need. Then we got some Bladesworn updates. You want to talk about those?
Yep, couple changes for Bladesworn. These are the skills that are getting changed. Artillery Slash is basically going down to 2 ammo in PvE, and then it will now always CC when you use it. So we want this to be a skill that can have an identity of being always a guaranteed CC when you want to use it. Help for break force, that's how you want to use it. Its damage is being adjusted so that the 1 ammo version is equal to what the 2 ammo version is now, and then the new 2 ammo will be what the 3 version is. So you're not losing damage from losing the ammo. Just want to make the skill more of a guaranteed CC.
Wait, I'm sorry. I can't wait for him to get to this. Dragon Spike Mine. This skill no longer creates a mine. All right, I said that you should stop renaming abilities when it's not necessary. You might have just made a situation where that could be considered a decent idea.
For PvE. Dragon Spike Mine. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, also, okay. The building up to 3 charges to get the full value of the skill does take probably a bit longer than we wanted. We like kind of the time it takes to get to that 2-charge version. Still have the decision point of do I want to cast this at 1 or wait for 2, but you don't have to wait for it to get all the way up to 3 ammo to get the value. Yeah.
Maybe it's just expressing who the Dragon Spike belongs to. That's just stupid. Go to your room. This is mine, Dragon Spike. Their last words. That's not good grammar.
I'm going to repeat again, this should not be a DPS nerf because the ammo value, it'll be fixed. You're not losing damage from this change. You're losing extra ammo. You might even gain more because now the 1 ammo version is just more powerful than it was before. Yeah, and then Dragon Spike Mine, it no longer creates a mine, and now causes an explosion at the beginning of the evade. This was a skill that the mine could be kind of tricky, especially on bosses that had kind of weird hitboxes, but the explosion could be pretty important for your rotation, for dumping cartridges, or whatever you wanted to do. So making the skill more consistent that you will get the explosion. There can't be like meme by hitbox with Dragon Spike Mine.
Yeah, basically like a more of a lightning reflexes type skill, but relevant damage and explosion.
You know what's funny? They're like, man, Necro Staff marks are not getting triggered by certain bosses. Let's make it so allies trigger the marks. Oh hey, Dragon Spike Mine is not being triggered by certain bosses. Well, that's 2 for 2 now, Bob. Should we fix the bosses? So what if we delete the mine? Like, what? I don't know. Like, maybe there's another overarching problem, but what do I know? I'm like the guy in the conference room that's like, "How about we fix the bosses?" And then the last panel of the comic is Mayasura getting thrown out the window.
And then detonate cartridges, it is being changed. So you have overcharged cartridges, and then you would reuse the detonate cartridge to throw them down, explode. No one really wanted to do that, so we're changing detonate cartridges to supercharged cartridges.
Yeah, no one wanted to fix that.
Overcharged cartridges, but more. So if you want like super big bursts, you can get both charges of your overcharged cartridges to get a damage increase that over time will be less, but the burst will be higher. So kind of leaning into the burst identity of Bladesworn even harder if you want to get a super big burst of your supercharged cartridges.
All right, some more updates to Bladesworn. Just some flow increases.
Yeah, all the add-up traits, the first 3 are getting their flow increase from 1 to 2 in PvE. This is just kind of trying to give Bladesworn some more passive flow increases.
That's not bad. Last time I played Bladesworn was when I tried support Bladesworn, and flow was very important to that, so more sources of that would probably feel better to play. Okay.
Because how it is that you can get a really big burst off low stabilizers, but if wonky things happen in fight,
Ooh, Lush Forest, no internal cooldown. Lush Forest made it to where you wanted to stagger your skills. If the ICD is being taken away, you can unga bunga a little bit more with those.
didn't go your way, it was really easy to run out of the flow you needed, so just trying to increase the fast amount of flow generated in fights. Dragon Scale Defense no longer has an internal cooldown. There's also kind of a weird trait.
Mega says they really do not understand the problem with Bladesworn. Mega, I am not a Bladesworn main, and I am not pretending to understand the intricacies and issues that it is currently facing. I am just pointing out the things that I'm knowledgeable about, but I do not know it all for this class, for sure.
Traits where if you were resetting your dragon's
Hashtag,
cooldown, it
not
would
my
be easy to
main.
lose track of this, and then you'd start it, and then in PvE you think you have stability, then you didn't. In competitive modes of protection, pretty good. So now you're always going to get that stab or prot depending on game mode when you use Dragon Slash. And then Unshakable Mountain is being reworked. This was a trait that didn't really have great gameplay out of it. It gave you barrier when you use the last charge of a ammo skill, and so basically what it would be is you spam your skills and then you just get barrier sustain. So we're tweaking it so we want the barrier to be more intentional and when you want it. So it's going to give you barrier where you can flow into charges below the charge threshold. Basically means like when you're stocking your first 4 charges, you're going to get some barrier. So it's going to be a lot more barrier, but in specific moments to hopefully be better to play with and play around than just a sustain trait. And then Lush Forest is another small tweak. It's losing its internal cooldown, so you always get the value if you're giving that trigger, because it made it so you had to like pace out your cooldown sometimes at an awkward pace. So now you just always know you're gonna get Lush Forest when you proc it.
Just feels a bit better to play with.
Yep.
Oh, spoiler. Well, not really.
Oh.
That's how I say all the profession changes. We do still have a few extra things to show off.
Imagine if he opens up a slide and it says like Guild Wars 3 is getting surprise dropped June 15th or something like that. And he's like, and then he like backs up real fast. Dude, that would be such a troll move. Sorry, hit the wrong button. If Roy was here, he would have done this. Oh.
Off here. Some new relics coming in the next major update. So let's just get into it. 6 new relics. Starting off with relic number 1.
Yeah, all of the relic names are redacted because no spoilers. In this case, anything with a spoiler, it's all
Wait, I'm sorry. No spoilers? Yeah. Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. So it's like Relic of Decima, right? So it's gonna be Relic of name of guy we're gonna fight. So there's probably gonna be one that's like, Relic of Joko returned. Chat, give me your most spoilery relic names. Relic of Bram's betrayal.
all generic. Relic 1, enemies you interrupt are inflicted with a unique damaging debuff. So it's basically going to be like condition, but not a condition because you can't cleanse it. So there's some extra damage on interrupt builds.
The damage is pretty reasonable. It's kind of intended to be like more of that, something like lightning.
Relic of Mabon lives.
Actually, you can't cleanse lightning rod, so
Relic of somehow dragons return.
It ends up playing really strange, but it's kind of similar to like the debuff on Ellie Spear Air 2, where it's like that damage over time debuff, but not a condition. So just finding the right number is going to be the important thing here, but it is an interesting idea and potentially a nice little add to some builds.
Yep.
Next up, relic number 2. Using a stance skill will cleanse conditions from yourself. So this will be currently 2 conditions. It's maybe a little bit aggressive, but keeping it self only, kind of a slight differentiation from like Relic of the Trooper or Soldier, depending on like what era of the game you remember playing PvP in, whether you have Soldier Rune or Trooper Rune. But 2 Connie cleanse per stance, potentially very strong on builds that play a lot of stances. Maybe we see more stance warriors, stance weavers. More stances, more cleanse. Could be pretty strong on some of these builds. Relic number 3. Cantrip and Meditation. These are 2 different skill types, obviously, but they are very similar in what they do and kind of the mechanics around them. So rather than have a relic that only targets one of these skill types, because they're both kind of used by a smaller subset of the professions, we figured that we could bunch them together, and then this relic just becomes more appealing to even more professions. And having protection here, potentially very strong. We obviously have like the changes to Soothing Disruption earlier on Ellie and the Cleansing Fire Stunbreak. Maybe we're looking at more cantrip builds with that trait. Now maybe with this relic, just a lot more protection. Or even like maybe something like Mediguard, where you have like the extra trait triggers in the trait line, Monk's Focus as well. You can have a lot of meditation triggers that are all giving protection. Maybe it's a really interesting relic for those builds.
Yep.
What's going on with relic number 4, Taylor?
This is going to be a relic that you like when you stack a lot of might on yourself. Because you see, when you grant yourself a stack of might, grant might to yourself. Has a small internal cooldown, so it doesn't like proc off itself. But if you're like a build with like Forceful Greatsword, that's giving.
I was just about to ask if it would make an infinite loop. It's like the first person loots this gives himself might, servers just crash. Yeah, grant yourself might when you grant might. Gain increased crit chance while you have might at or above a stack threshold.
Giving yourself a lot of little stacks all at once. This is going to like double your might basically, and it's going to be super good. And as well as a bonus, you are going to get increased crit chance while at or above the might stack threshold. So if you have like I can't remember these exact numbers, but if you have 10 or more Knight, it'll give you like 10% crit chance. So it's a buff that you really like if you're stacking Might and you like critting.
Maybe interesting.
So if you could, all right, so the math is going to be this. If you assume you have this buff at all times, and you can get 10% less precision on your gear to hit the crit cap, then how high can you get your damage with those changes?
Interesting with Might Makes Right.
By moving that precision over to ferocity or power. Ah! Hi. Is it your bedtime? I gotta tell the boy goodnight. I'll be right back.
Fun choice.
Yep.
I just realized this janky setup that we're using right now, chat, that I slapped together while preparing the stream when everything was breaking. Apparently, even while I'm muted, it still picks up sound. So y'all can't hear me, but his mouth still moves. So I was telling my son goodnight, and I was just watching Mug's mouth.
How about relic number 5? What's going on here?
Yes, another one with kind of redacted name. Gain volatility, which is just like a stacking buff. And that doesn't really do anything, it just says how many stacks you've done. When you successfully combo filled with a blast finisher, and then if you blast again at a certain amount of stacks, so like if you have 3 stacks, it'll trigger an explosion, which itself will do damage around you, and grant you increased damage. This is kind of a DPS relic around build that just so happen to be blasting a lot of things. Do that big proc, it's kind of like, flame expulsion type deal around you, and then also give you like 10% damage for the next little bit.
Yeah, so if you like blasting, that might be a good choice for you.
Yep.
And last up, we kind of saved the most interesting one for last, I would say. You want to talk about it, Taylor?
This one's starting to be fun. Yes, so this one's about completing different combat triggers, and when you complete all of them, you've assembled Exodia, you then get increased stats, all boons, and most importantly, you grow big. So basically, you have to do one of each.
What? When you reach the buff threshold, you gain increased stats and all boons for a duration. Buff gained on using a heal skill, an elite skill, evading an attack, disabling an enemy, and comboing a field. Must do each once.
Each of these, use a healing skill, use an elite skill, evading an attack, disabling an enemy, and finishing a field. All our favorite triggers all in one. Using them, you will then grant, huge boons, huge stats, super cool moment.
Very powerful payoff for jumping through a lot of hoops. But, there's definitely some builds that could do this a bit better than others. So, that's generally true with relics, where there are some relics that are super general, applicable to a lot of builds, but then there's also relics that are a lot more specific, more valuable to certain builds that can, utilize their triggers better than others, and this is most likely going to be one of them. You look at things like Revenant that generally has lower cooldown elite skills, and they kind of have all these pieces available to them as well. Maybe this is really appealing to them if you want to grow big and gain all moons and gain increased stats. So I think that's all we have today.
Yep.
I can go back to this scene, and we can figure out how to do an outro here. Obviously, a lot of changes. We've been doing that for a while. We had that kind of rocky start at the beginning with some technical difficulties thanks to missing.
You do it like this, Cal. Say it back. Is he joking? Is he joking? That's the question going through everybody's heads right now.
Out on our hero Roy Marks, of course. Maybe we'll see him back for the next stream, but thanks everyone for kind of bearing with us through the technical difficulties, obviously. Will be much improved next time. Even if Roy is not there, we've kind of fixed all the problems, hopefully. We'd love to see him. Please feel free to give that feedback on the balance preview post. Be like, all these changes look fantastic or ridiculous or crazy, but we really want to see Roy in the preview. That's the most important thing to us right now.
Yep.
But we have been at it for a while. There's a lot of big changes, a lot of interesting functional changes in this patch, on top of some of the numerical changes that we always see. So a lot going on.
What is on the right? The fan? Oh, he's got a ceiling fan, but it's just the background blur thing makes it weird.
Really excited to see what you guys think of it. Are there some crazy changes in here? You probably, there are things that may be a little crazier than others. Give us that feedback. Is there anything that you feel like is missing? We are at that point in the development cycle where we do have the time to add a few extra things to the patch, clean up some things that maybe aren't landing as well in the patch. Obviously, we're not going to add the same amount of changes and just double the amount of changes in the patch. That's not really the intent, but the goal of these previews is always to get your feedback and get those extra thoughts, like what's going on here, what's going to work, what's not going to work, and give us the opportunity to make the patch even better when it ships on June 24th. Anything to add, Taylor, before we get out of here?
I guess just plugging the other parts. If you didn't know, push beta going on right now. Be sure to get your games in. I think PvP Rush currently also happening, right? So I know after the stream, I'm just going to go...
PvP Rush and Push.
Yeah, definitely get some push in. We've seen a lot of good feedback around that as well. And, there's still a lot of work to be done, as that is very clearly a beta map. Still a lot of temporary assets, a lot of, ideas that could work with the game mode. Some will work, some will not. We're still looking to make that game mode as good as possible as we look ahead to future betas and the eventual launch of Push. But the core functionality of that game mode, we've seen a lot of positive feedback around, which we're really excited about. So if you haven't already, go check it out. Go play some Push. It's just replacing the rank queue this week for the mini season. There's some rewards tied to that. You can get some unique titles and just play the game mode. Give us your feedback on that. Give us your feedback on the balance update. We'd love to hear it. And beyond that, we'll see you in the mists.
See you in the mist.
Oh, okay, just abruptly ended. To the person in chat who asked the last time I did a heel bender video, there's a link to it right there. Okay, so they just like abruptly ended that. All right, cool. So that is the end of those changes. That's some pretty neat stuff. There is a lot going on, and my brain is a medicated mess right now. Some of it's really interesting, like the thing they're doing with the staff marks. Like, I'm sad to see the old Transfusion go, but this thing with the staff marks looks very interesting. I hope it's fun. Ranger Torch getting visited for the first time in 5 or 6 years. And then there's a lot of stuff that they're just tweaking numbers. Like, hold on, where's it? Like, look at this. This is all just LE number tweaking. Like, there's a lot of LE number stuff. But as always, I shared my thoughts on these things, like, as they mentioned them. I don't think Dragon Spike Mine should no longer make a mine, just because, that's silly. Things like that. I will include the link to the wiki notes, and once I find it, I don't have it in front of me, but once I find it, I will include a link to the forums, where if you don't like any of these things, you can complain about it. And it is good to say something, because there have been times in the past, like Spectral Grasp just recently, where if an overwhelming amount of people are like, yo, Cal, that's a dumb idea because bleh, and then, maybe he won't bleh, and then it gets undone. So if there is something you want to say, whining about it on the internet to a live stream does nothing. But if you whine about it on the internet on their forums, there's a chance. So that's it for this one, and yeah, we'll see you in the mist or something. I don't know. I don't have a way to close this out. That's the end of reacting to their stuff. Oh, I guess I should take this chance to mention, if you are watching this on the YouTubes in the next day or two, on Sunday, assuming I don't still feel like death, we are celebrating me having streamed every single day for 7 years in a row. And we will be streaming all day Sunday, again, assuming I've recovered a little bit. On that day, we are giving away many, many gem codes, as well as many things that are inside of the Guild Vault here, including a Generation 3 Greatsword and Hammer, a Generation 1 Greatsword and Hammer, and a glowy eyeball in case you want to look like Sans from Undertale, that is also worth like 2,000 gold. So this is like 10k gold right here. So we got a lot of cool giveaway stuff. I'm going to do a lot of gem code stuff like that, and that is going to be the plan for Sunday. Will it be hourly? If you send me 8 more legendaries, I will give one away hourly. So to the rest of you, we'll see if Salih decides to send me 8 more. If not, no, I don't have enough for hourly. We'll see if anyone decides to do that. But that is the plan. For the people that are watching this live, I am glad we got to keep the streak alive. I feel terrible. I am going to take this chance to wrap up the stream a bit earliest we've wrapped it up in a while, and just chill for a bit. I'm going to get some rest. Happy that there's not a morning stream tomorrow. I will see you guys tomorrow night for the Saturday night stream. Boo. Boo, you flute! I'm in no mood. So I'll see you guys Saturday night. If I'm feeling better, we'll do some Doom and we'll do some Baldur's Gate.
Look at me, I'm so curvy!
Yeah.